Archive memory access. If an item does not appear in our records, it does not exist.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Tales from the Archives, a very special episode for the Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary as we cover the novelization written by Matthew Stover. This is a little bit different than what we normally do, because normally we're kind of going and recapping, different Legends and Canon books, but this is kind of different because, like I said, 20th anniversary, and people have seen the movie, but there's so much that this adds context to. But before we get into it, why doesn't everybody introduce themselves for new people that maybe have come to everybody's different pages and we're all teaming up again?
You want to go first, Grayson?
Hey,
I'm
first, Grayson,
you talk first.
Mortis FM. I am a guy that does stuff a lot of times with the guy in the bottom right corner named Will of the Force. We do a show called Determined Focus. You should go check that out if you want to. Which also, you should meet Will. He's pretty cool. His name is Will, and he is Will of the Force.
Yep. If you need one more guy yapping about Star Wars on the internet, come find me. Yeah. Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. Woo!
But if you want two cooler guys, one guy who can spin a lightsaber way better than I can, and another guy that's way taller than me, Connor and Seth of Beyond the Dune Sea, who kind of really started this Revenge of the Sith month that you guys got going on.
Yeah, it's been fun, and hey, and you've been our gracious announcer for each one of the episodes, which we love.
It's very, very true.
I'm not gonna lie, I forgot about that. Yes, I do the voice. I was like, yeah, for Tales from the Archives. Yes, I am that guy.
Always in our hearts.
Yeah,
never too far
away.
The
myth, the legend.
Yeah,
thank you. I try. I do like doing the voiceover stuff. Let's check in with chat before we get right into the meat and the bones of this legendary novelization. I'm assuming this is obviously a lot of collaboration of all of our channels, so if y'all recognize any of these names, please.
Yes, that's our homie Matthew, who's using the Obi-Wan Kenobi hello there emote. So appreciate you, Matthew.
Yeah, perfect. By the way, hello there does not appear in this book. So sad.
I know. I was so sad.
I was like, it's okay.
3 out of 10 just because of that.
Yeah, Gabby with the Yoda. Yoda is in this disguising himself as a baby. Lainey, we're so back. Lainey, I know you haven't read this book. Don't lie.
Play as Batman, Lainey.
Jacob, let's go, dude.
Let's go.
This is crazy.
I hate that.
That is.
Yep. Piatti Diddy. Yeah, we've
I hate
words with Piatti Diddy in the past here, so I get you.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and bring up the super chat. I'm assuming this is for y'all. I'll never forget the day I first found this book in a little bookshop on vacation in 8th grade. I read the whole thing in one night. It is probably the Star Wars book I've read the most. I thought you were gonna say that, like, the Star Wars book of all time.
Hey, you know what? You ain't wrong.
I was about to say it's kind of like it's. We'll get into it in a second, but let's see. We got Quinlan, of course.
Hello there,
Enigma. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
The Enig.
Okay. Daniel Barry Sports Highlights. Hello. Happy Tuesday. Did you read this book, Daniel? I hope you did. And yes, apparently no. Seth can twirl a lightsaber pretty meanly, I would say.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
He was trained in the Jedi arts.
It keeps popping that up.
I'll Count Dooku himself. Yeah, I mean, if you want to know the real rule, I want a different form of exercise, and so it's not like that. I already do yoga and I lift weights, and they were. So I was like, let's give this a shot. And so yeah, I'm all right at it. Yeah, I don't think I'm great, but I'm all right.
We gotta get him one in his hand, especially. Isn't your favorite the Phantom Menace Obi-Wan hilt?
Yeah, dude, that spins so nicely.
It is.
It's
nice,
ridiculous.
Dude. It's really balanced. Yeah. Before we get into this, I have to make it known we're doing a giveaway of this copy right here. This is actually the science fiction book club edition of Revenge of the Sith. So it's a little bit a little bit smaller and more compact.
Okay.
Will is wigging out over there. So yeah, you see
What the heck is going on? Hold on.
Hey, it's
Hold
not
on.
this time.
There's a disturbance in the force.
Imagine if I was turning that into something. Hold on.
I legit.
Dude,
Oh
I
my
was gonna
gosh,
say,
dude.
I'm
A
scared.
dark shadow falls upon moves.
I got
And
scared.
that's just the
dude.
thing. There's even a darker shadow in the chair
Yes.
as the shadow falls over
Dude.
Coruscant.
Is he?
The dark shadow overtook Will,
Okay.
and the will of the Force became black into the fires of Mustafar.
I don't know what the heck that was, but we're back.
But to win this copy, you got to be here. You got to be here in the stream. We'll probably be announcing it right here at the end. But to do so, I'm going to run it right now. Put in the chat hashtag ROTS20, all caps. Should be
ROTS 20.
hashtag ROTS20.
That's hard to chant.
I'm gonna put it in the chat for everybody. Even though it will enter us in the giveaway if we win, I'm not going to obviously do it. Which
I don't get a chance to win it?
But I want a science fiction edition of the book. What is it?
I'm turning off the stream.
Oh.
There you go. Okay, it put all three of us in there. So
Good. All right.
there you go. So yeah, you see it
Hashtag
right
ROTS
there.
20. Here,
Rots.
I'm gonna pin that on our end real quick. That way y'all can see it.
Oh, it's running at the bottom now. You can't miss that.
Oh, there you go. Or
yes.
that.
There you go. There you go.
This attempt on my life has left me scarred.
Guys, what did we think of this critically acclaimed novelization of the film? The floor is yours.
Who talks first?
who's going? I already made that joke.
Yeah. I mean, if he's gonna just keep setting it up, we gotta knock it out of the park.
You go first. You're the next one on the,
Oh, I
on
have
the,
to
on the
go
list.
first. Okay. So I enjoyed it. I think the jury is okay. So I enjoy this book as the book, but I also enjoy the movie as the movie, if that makes sense. I think it's really hard to try to say that like one's better than the other because I think they both really play to the medium that they're in, and they both play to their strengths really, really well. I love this as yet another companion piece to this movie because I say that about a lot of things. I'm like, it's just a companion piece to Revenge of the Sith. They're like, so yeah, overall, I really do enjoy it. It is definitely in the top half because I am, if you're new here, traditionally I don't like these books that we read. So yeah, this is definitely in the top half of the books that we've read.
Is it better than Dark Disciple?
Oh, it's way better than Dark Disciple. I think I like it better than the Thrawn stuff. But I mean, at the same time, though, that's kind of unfair to rank it because it is one of the movies.
That's kind of the thing where I'm reading it and I'm like, this is probably the best book we've read since Plagueis, but also like it is just a novelization of
it's not
the
fair.
movie. So it's like
I don't know, guys. I don't know. That's
Sometimes
fair.
you go, man, this is awesome. Then you're like, oh yeah, it's a Star Wars movie. Of course, it's like, it
But the
makes
writing
sense.
is really good.
It is really
that's-
good.
You can't take
There-
that.
Yeah, the writing is really well done. But yeah, overall, I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
agree with you on that one note that like it's kind of hard to say like one's better than the other. I think what I will say is there's moments where I'm like, oh, the book I kind of like the way it did this little moment better of like the dialogue because there's certain little changes, nothing drastic. The plot still goes the exact same way, but then there's other times where I'm like, no, I like the movie version of this better. So like you said, a good meshing of the two. Connor, what did you think?
That is exactly what I told Seth, believe it or not, before we started the stream today. Because I finished the last the last third today.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm terrible, I procrastinate. And it's just it's how it be. The first 2/3, I was writing like peak. This is peak. This is peak. Wow, this is even more peak. I'll be honest, so just to get my critique out of the way here, we'll talk about it more later, I'm sure. But there are a few things in the third act that I'm like, no, this does not hit the way the movie does. I think the movie hits way more. There's some odd choices, I think, here and there. But that being said, this is before the third act, I would have said definitely the best book we've read. It's either that or it's number 2 after Plagueis, in my opinion. It is really well done. Matthew Stover captures character unlike any author I've read. the way that, because it's exactly the same as the movie. Basically, there's like you said, a few changes, but you're really going inside people's minds and really understanding why they're making choices that they're making throughout. And that is such a strength to this author that I think is really unique to some of the other authors we read. And really, this is the whole campfire thing personified for me. Like that discussion about campfires. This is just how Rots would be told at a different campfire. And I really love that, because there's emphasis on moments that the movie doesn't have emphasis on. And then there's moments that the movie places a lot of emphasis on that the book doesn't. Like the whole Yoda versus Palpatine fight is like 3 paragraphs maybe in this book. You know, in the movie, obviously, that is a major capstone along with the Battle of the Heroes. So it's just, I like that aspect, I think, the most, is that it's that campfire story. You know, Matthew Stover had a little bit different way he wanted to tell it than George Lucas told it. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead, Seth.
In his defense, though, I think that Matthew Stover probably got an early script that said, and they fight.
Of course, yeah,
that I do like that he didn't.
No, it's not negative. It's definitely a positive of the book. I love that it's that campfire aspect where it's like, you know what, I'm in the mood to sit down and experience it this way. Just like if you want to sit down and experience it with the video game, you can do that. Or you could do it through the movie. Like the movie, that's the wild thing about Revenge of the Sith is it really was an era. It wasn't just like a movie or or a book or a video game. It was all of those things. It was pretty cool.
It does say at the bottom, like, it was based on the story and screenplay by George Lucas, which definitely means, like, I mean, because it came out like a handful of weeks before the movie, or maybe like because I don't remember. Like,
I actually don't know when it came out.
Yeah, I would be interested to know, because it was like really sprinkled around. Like, we know, wasn't like the video game like 2 weeks before the
the video game was 2 weeks before. So it was crazy to me.
It had like actual like scenes from the movie.
12 minutes of footage from the movie. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Will, what are your thoughts?
So not to reiterate what everybody said, but like the things that this book does well are the exact things that the movie does kind of lackluster, and vice versa. There are parts of the book that I wish were in the movie, and there are parts of the movie I wish were in the book. I'd say the biggest thing for me, and it's funny just bringing up Jacob Williamson's comment right here. Not necessarily Gendy. I know Gendy's stuff was going on like kind of in this same era. Like we get the Dirge call out at one point in the book, but
Outlaw
like
17 gets a mention. Ventress.
Like all of that is phenomenal, but I think the way Anakin is written in this book, especially for the first third, is the closest we get to the connection between Matt Lanter's Anakin and Hayden Christensen's Anakin. Like his dialogue, especially listening to the audiobook, like his dialogue and his quips and his like fun attitude, as much as Anakin is doing that at the beginning of the Revenge of the Sith movie, a lot of people refer to that as like a little bit of a disconnect. Like if you watch Clone Wars season 7 and you watch Hayden in Revenge of the Sith, it's great, and I think they both do phenomenal with the character, but it does feel like kind of two separate ways the characters are being told, right? In the book here, I feel like this is so close to connecting what we saw in Clone Wars season 7 Anakin to what we see in Revenge of the Sith, the movie. So like if you were to watch the finale of Clone Wars season 7 and then read the first portion of this book and then watch the back half of the movie, I think that would be the most fluid transition between Matt Lanter and Hayden. But like I really love it no matter what. I think it's fun to see different iterations of the character, especially because like maybe it's different for me because I listened to the audiobook as well as read, so like that's a different take on the character as well than what just you're reading in your headcanon while you're reading. Because like I was listening to the audiobook, I heard the audiobook like the narrator's voice. I didn't hear Matt Lanter, I didn't hear Hayden talking when I was reading. It was the narrator. So maybe that's a little bit different, but at least from my experience, that connection was great. I wouldn't say this would be like, as much as I would love to see something animated, that would be awesome. But I like the movie the way the movie is. I like the book the way the book is. I don't think either should change either.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think
Agreed.
there's what really, dude, like you said, both of y'all, or everybody really said, like, especially with the character work, like, this made me somehow appreciate some of these characters even more, especially Anakin and Obi-Wan, dude. Like,
Yep.
Made me appreciate Mace Windu.
I know. I was gonna say the same thing. I was like, oh, like you kind of get where Mace is coming from. Like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, I'm this huge Mace Windu fan, but like, of like him talking about like how much he loves the Republic and about doing the right thing, and like he's just like how frustrated he is of like, why are we even having to like talk about this? Like, I don't want to be talking about this, but like I feel like we have to because we are the Jedi, and like, you know, even Seth, I know you're a big thing about this, but like him talking about like the shatter points and stuff, right? Of like
him seeing the world as shatter points, like that shows that like, no wonder no one can connect with this human being. He sees the world differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's not a single character that didn't benefit from this novelization, I don't think.
Yeah.
Like every single character is elevated to and that's really the strength of the medium. This is why it's so difficult to compare the two, is because in a book you get to see inside people's minds in ways that you just can't in a movie. I think that the movie does a really great job showing you a lot of these characters' emotions through performance and through sort of their actions. Like the scene that comes to mind right away is Anakin at the top of the Jedi Temple, you know, crying, tears streaming down his face as you get music too, right? You have John Williams music, you have the sunset, all the imagery is there, whereas in the book you don't get any of that. So you need an author who can really hone in on a character's thoughts, and I think Matthew Stover does it in a way I just have never seen. Because I'll admit, at first when I was reading the beginning third, and it kept cutting like, this is Anakin and Obi-Wan, and I was like, okay, this is a little cheesy. I don't know if I like this, but by the end, I'm like, okay, never mind. This is
especially the every time it's like, this is Anakin Skywalker for now, this is Anakin Skywalker right now, this is Anakin Skywalker forever. You know, like, and it's those vignettes of like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, and I think it really nails a lot of Anakin's angst of him being like this glorified war hero, but also like the psychological, I don't even want to say like trauma, but like the expectations of that. And of course his desperation to get back to Padme. And probably my two favorite things in this book, one specifically doing with Anakin, is the analogy of the dragon. The dragon within the dead star of Anakin's heart, and that it whispers to him that everything dies. And the analogy of when he turns into Vader and him killing the dragon, and then the end of the book of being like, there was no dragon, there was only you. You did this.
That was my favorite part. That was at the end. I'm so glad you brought it up, because that is my. Can I talk about that right now? Is that okay?
Dude, yeah.
That part at the end was such a validation for me, because it's an argument I see all the time that I personally have frustrations with. That no, when Anakin turns into Vader, he's a different guy. You can't put any of that on Anakin. No, that's the thing. Is like the Anakin, he doesn't do it all for Padme. It's what he says. It's what he tells himself. But it's not. He's power hungry. He gets all bought into his own myth. And at the end, I love that just that line that said that there was no dragon. It was you. You're the one who choked Padme. You're the one who killed her. You're the one who did all of this. You can't scapegoat it on Vader. You can't scapegoat it on the furnace of your heart and everything. And it made all of these analogies just seem like that's what Anakin built up as like excuses for his own darkness. And I love that the book takes the final payoff of it is that, it was all on you, man. It was all, you have no one to blame but yourself. So good.
Oh, so good. Seth.
I know that, like, I'm always bringing up like the Christ analogies, but did you catch the whole that he crushed the dragon's head, but then it struck his heel?
Yes.
Yeah, and I was just like, dude, that's straight out of the Bible. I was like, that's insane.
There's a lot of biblical analogies in this book. Like, it goes hard a few times on it. I'm like, wow, that was very specific.
Yeah,
interesting.
But I just, again, I was like, that is scripture.
It uses the same language. It said he crushes the serpent with his heel. Yeah. And I'm like, brother, like another Messiah did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
I think that's interesting.
I like truly, if I thought about making the title of this stream different than of just like being unfortunately it was too long of a title, but like you said this about Revenge of the Sith years ago when I first saw y'all's show before we were like really properly friends. And I think it was when y'all were ranking maybe you guys were just ranking the movies, and you said Revenge of the Sith is like modern mythology. This is like that even more amplified, where I'm like, this is like, and not to get into like the George Lucas joke, but like this is modern poetry, dude. Like truly, like that's what, when you said like it feels like Star Wars scripture sometimes, like I'm reading it and I'm like, oh my goodness, dude, this is insane.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason these stories are so pervasive. I know that maybe at first glance that could be scoffed at or cringed at, like, oh, come on, guys, it's just Star Wars. But I mean, there's a reason why back in the day, those campfires where you told myths of gods and monsters and all of these things, it's because they spoke to something here, you know, and now we have different mediums. We have different campfires. We're sitting around one right now, in fact. And this campfire is all about, it's Star Wars is a medium to, the phrase we like to use is tentpole stories. It's like those stories that, you know, you watch as a kid, you like watching the saber fights and the space battles and stuff. But as you get older, you start to realize what those movies taught you, even if you didn't realize it. Yep. And that's what campfire stories have done for thousands of years. And you're right. It's like this one is a modern day tragedy. Absolutely. And you learn so much about, you learn so much about the person, the human person, you know, the condition of temptation and sin and fall and what it means to be a light and all of those things. I think it's so good. And this book goes even harder into it. And it's almost like Revenge of the Sith could be an entry point, like the movie, and then the book is you want to delve deeper into the concepts. You really want to get, like, you know, into the weeds of the mythology, into the weeds of the character, and all of that. Then okay, let's you can read this. You know, it's great.
It really sells on, like you said, like the inner thoughts of the characters, and especially I think really assists even more so with Anakin's fall. The one thing, it's my second favorite aspect of the book, is how manipulative Palpatine is, which obviously we know Palpatine is, but like the scene when he reveals himself to Anakin is like, obviously it's a great moment in the movie, but you get so much more room to breathe in the book, and the dialogue is a little bit more expansive, and it brings in the whole subplot, which I loved, especially because like it felt like pseudo Andor vibes, where like we get the Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, like senators talking about that stuff, and I'm like, I feel like I'm watching like a prequel scene with Genevieve O'Reilly's, and it's not in the book a lot, but then how Palpatine uses that as well to be like, hey, even the senators are in on this, man. Like they're trying to get rid of me, you know, like
it's so good. Ugh. The little manipulations of like, okay, Palpatine's putting Anakin on the Jedi Council, and that's going to sow dissension within the Jedi Council, but then he'll take Anakin and make him his guard during, you know, the meeting with the petition of the 2000. And it's like, there's so many layers that are going on where now the Senate now thinks that, oh my gosh, the Jedi, now they're aligning themselves with Palpatine. We can't trust them, you know, to guard the Senate. And it's like the way that Palpatine just manipulates. He doesn't even need to be a Sith Lord to beat the Jedi. That's what's so amazing about how the character is written. And to be real, this I think it reads in the movie as well, but you get a lot deeper here in the book about how his power is not in the dark side. He is powerful in the dark side. Mm-hmm. His power is in his political conniving, and how he does it all from his seat, you know, with a flick of his wrist, and, you know, just his honeyed words. It's really remarkable, actually. Like that, I had many moments while I was reading where I'm like, man, Palpatine's slick, man. He's getting this. He's taken all of these strings somehow and like made this perfect puppeteering, and it's so good.
Yeah, it really brought me back to when we read Plagueis, and there's so much connective tissue there, especially like you definitely get the impression that, of course, with, you know, Labyrinth of Evil and then Rise of the Dark Lord, which were part of the multimedia initiative, both written by Luceno, but Luceno, you know, it was only 6 or 5 years later was writing Plagueis, right? Or was writing Plagueis even before that. And there is a moment here that I wanted to highlight that is almost an exact quote that appears in Plagueis, and it's literally
from what would you say?
Plagueis. It's a quote that Palpatine says to Anakin. that literally is an adaptation of what Plagueis says to him. And I have the quote here. This is Palpatine speaking to Anakin. He says, "The Sith do not fear the dark side. The Sith have no fear. They embrace the whole spectrum of experience, from the heights of transcendent joy to the depths of hatred and despair. Beings have these emotions for a reason, Anakin. That is why the Sith are more powerful. They are not afraid to feel." Plagueis says almost the exact same thing in that novel. And I was like, dude, the connective tissue is just unreal.
It's so good. The way Palpatine is written in this is like a masterclass at just about every scene.
Yeah. Yes, Seth.
I mean, the part where he goes to the door and it's like, "Guards, help me. Oh, please stop." And then he destroys the recorder and then just goes, "Shh."
Yep. Dude,
and then attacks Mace Windu.
So
I'm like, dude, that's like horror movie villain.
What?
Like,
especially because like at first I thought he threw his lightsaber, but then it was realized he was going so fast that he like cuts off the head of Saesee Tiin and then just a hole straight through the back of Agent Kolar's head. I was like, oh my goodness. And then literally only like 20 pages later, when Anakin storms the Jedi Temple and opens the door and there's that like guard and he's like, "What's going on?" Saber underneath the chin, straight through the head, and Anakin just goes, "You have no idea." Like I was like, this is I was like, obviously like, you can't get away with this in like a PG-13 movie because that would be like brutal, but oh my goodness. Yeah, Will.
There's a portion at the beginning of the book in when Palpatine is being rescued by Anakin and Obi-Wan, and it's while Obi-Wan's passed out. It's Palpatine giving Anakin advice on what to do, and like, "You'll be a hero," and Anakin's like, "Sorry, the only people who can do this is the Senate." And it like cuts off the next line, and Palpatine's just like, "In due time." Like, yeah, I am the Senate. It's just awesome how that sets up that, because I mean, "I am the Senate" gets memed on a lot from Revenge of the Sith, but like that portion of the breadcrumbs lining up that line, I was like, oh, that makes it pretty badass when it gets to that line later on.
Yeah. There's also one of my more interesting points is because something that's not really in the movie at all is the fact that it's introduced pretty early on when they land on Coruscant that the Jedi have tracked Sidious to Coruscant, that he's living in that building, right? But they're like, "We don't know who he is," and they're like, "The only reason we don't suspect Palpatine himself is because he already does control the Senate," right? Which is such a genius thing of like, oh, it can't be him because he already has so much power anyway, which is again like such an interesting flip of the coin.
It's in his inner circle, right?
Yep. So they're like, there's also a part I wanted to, I didn't highlight it, but I remember it pretty vividly. A very dark moment for Anakin where he's like meeting with Palpatine. I think this was before definitely before that Palpatine's revealed to be a Sith. He talks to Masamita a little bit, and he's just straight up like, "Man, I hope he's the Sith so I can cut his head off." I was like,
"Yeah, I know,
bro.
I know." I was like, "Bro, chill."
I was
what is up with that?
Yeah, like, all right, Vader is bleeding through a lot, and like, it's this interesting like dissociative. Like, yes, I know this plays into the argument of, oh, they're two different people, but truly, like, it's how obsessive and how like just how uncontrolled Anakin is. Of like when he almost has these moments, and we first see it when he kills Dooku. Is like it's almost like he blacks out, right? Like it's just full hatred, locked in rage, right? And that's consistently what happens until finally like they mesh in. There's so many points I could bring up. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Well, I think it really does hammer home the idea that like the Clone Wars were built to build an apprentice while also tearing another down.
Yeah.
That like the Clone Wars at their core wore Dooku down, but also built Anakin up so that they could switch positions.
And what a gambit, by the way, on Palpatine. Like I got to the point where after Mace knows, I'm like, Palpatine has hedged all of his bets on this, everything. Like, and you could tell he's reveling in it. There's even a moment where he says like he doesn't care, like he's not bothered by any of it.
Yeah.
But what if he's wrong? You know, what if it all hinges on like a small thing could happen here or there and the whole thing would change.
Yeah.
Like in that moment when Mace reads the shatter point on Anakin saying like, oh, everything's on him.
Yeah.
And if he would have read that differently to say, well, okay, that means you have to come with us. I need to not trust my own instincts, but instead what I'm reading in the shatter point and come with us. the whole story's done. You know, Palpatine loses in that moment because all Anakin needs is validation, and if Mace Windu finally gives it to him, then that's it. It tips in their favor. But Palpatine just he I don't know. It's just incredible that all of the knowledge of the Sith now rests on Palpatine because he sacrificed his own apprentice in the beginning of the story, and it gets to like this point, you know, this apex where if you lose, you're not only are you done, but 2,000 years of Sith teachings are gone too, and it's just crazy.
It's interesting though, because it reminds you of like the Plagueis book, where like unfortunately times will come where the Sith can't help it, that they just feed into the dark side, and they're just riding that wave along with it. And I think it's one of those moments that like it happened with Plagueis, when with like a couple different moments when he was fighting different people, where it's like this just doesn't even seem like the same guy. He's being so aggressive and everything, but it's like he can't help it. And I think the whole thing is Palpatine sitting in that chair waiting for them. He's riding that lightning. It doesn't matter. It's like, okay, we'll see what happens. Whatever the will of the Force is.
Yeah. Random, the guy in the bottom. There's literally a chapter called Will of the Force, and I was like, Will has his own chapter.
Well, did you notice that? I didn't realize that Will and Obi-Wan were on such good terms, because at the end of the book it says that Obi-Wan leaves it up to the will of the Force to decide Anakin's fate.
Yeah, he called me about it too.
It was
like, hey man, should this guy die? And Will was like, nah.
And then you fight him again, and he still doesn't die again. In the Kenobi series, right?
While we're talking about Palpatine, I noticed throughout that we mentioned the biblical reference earlier, but he really is written as like Satan in this. It's crazy how much I mean in the way he talks about like Anakin, you know, like good as a point of view, and I mean, you have to give in to your emotions. Like emotions aren't bad. Like we feel these things for a reason, right? And I'm like, that's straight out of like of the devil's playbook right there. Like, oh man, but you're feeling this way. If you're feeling that way, then it can't be bad, right? Come on,
dude. Literally, that scene where he's like, "Name what you want, I'll give it to you," to illustrate the point, like to kind of boil Anakin down.
Yes.
Just like, I was like, when he was like, "Give me what you want," or anything you want, he's like a speeder. I was like, what are we going with this? And then I was like, oh my goodness, like the fact that Palpatine's like egging him on to be like trying to really get what he wants, which is to save.
Well, it's the scene. I mean, that is literally Jesus and Satan on the the pinnacle of the temple. Satan does the same thing. He says, you know, all of this could be yours.
He's got about it.
And Jesus is like, no, bro. And he walks away, which is why Jesus will be the GOAT, Anakin. You know, sorry, buddy. You had to fall a little bit.
That's why Anakin ain't really quite there.
But the analogy is great. That's why this is why I put so much stock into the narrative device of Anakin not only being the chosen one, but the Immaculate Conception. It's so important to his character, and why his fall is so tragic is because he does have all of these parallels to a Christ-like figure, but he doesn't meet them. And that's what makes it so hard when he falls, is it's not like someone like a Mace Windu who might have fallen, or if Yoda fell or something. It's Anakin. Everything, even the Force itself, is like, you are the Messiah. You know, and he looks that destiny in the face and says no, basically. But like any cosmic entity, you know, the Force finds a way in the end, and that's some of the great poetry here. You know, especially when you start to hear about how big shadow the light casts, you know, and it whittles it down to 2 Jedi and 2 Sith, and it's like, well, I know this argument's been debated for decades at this point, but did Vader accomplish his goal in that moment? Was he really chosen?
Even Mace brings up of like, they bring it up several times in the book of like, we don't even know like what bringing balance to the Force means. Like that, like I think they talk about that. Like we still don't know what that is. And they keep reiterating like, maybe we've misinterpreted the prophecy. Yeah. It's a Jedi prophecy, but it doesn't say he has to be a Jedi. You know, like, and so it's all of this like misconstrued. And I guess like the big point of that is like, Anakin is like the chosen one, but he's not like God. You know, like he's a man.
He's an
just
instrument.
a God. Yeah, he is a tool. And he is just a very, very flawed, broken man. And that's what makes the fall so heartbreaking, and how manipulated he is. Not even really just by Palpatine. Like I don't fully blame the Jedi in this, but you definitely like see how Palpatine was able to convince Anakin, like, hey, the Jedi they were afraid of him. Like that's truly, they do keep his power down a little bit, because they're like, we are kind of scared of how out of control you are, you know?
The best trick that Palpatine plays, I think, throughout this story, you see it in the movie as well. He doesn't lie to Anakin, and that's huge because the Jedi do make him lie. And so when he's faced with those decisions, like, have I ever asked you to do something dishonest, to go against your moral compass? And he doesn't. Now he exaggerates, and that's really where his skill comes into play, is that Palpatine exaggerates the truth when he needs to, or will underplay it when he needs to. So when he's talking to him, for example, like, the Jedi are going to come kill me. They're going to come execute me because they're going to take over. Anakin knows that they are plotting against the Chancellor. Now, I don't think they have any intention before they know he's, a Sith Lord, that they're going to execute him. So Palpatine plays that up a little bit, but there's enough seeds of truth that Anakin believes it. And then on the other side, they're wanting him to lie to his best friend. And Obi-Wan is an interesting fulcrum here because he's like, that it's the one thing Anakin can't do is he can't lie. Like, and you're asking him to do that, and it's not going to work. Sorry, Will, I've blabbered on for a while.
No, you're good. The main thing, I started laughing because when Grayson was talking about, we don't even know like what that means about the prophecy. I just thought of the Freddie Prinze Jr. clip of the balance and what does that add? Twins. What I did find, going back to you guys' point about Palpatine leaving those breadcrumbs of like what he can give Anakin, there are so many times he sprinkles in, more so than the movie, of like, you can save the one you love, you can save everyone, and like not even in reference to Padme, just in reference to what's going on while he's hanging out around Anakin. Just, and like, especially in that same conversation at the beginning of the book with like, you can be the hero, Anakin, you can be the hero of the Republic, like trying to build him up, giving him all of the prideful thoughts. I just thought that line of like him verbatim saying you can save the one you love, and then it goes back to Anakin's perspective where he says he heard it like a voice from his own dreams, where that like, and I found that line so cool as well, just because it plays on like obviously Anakin's visions of Padme dying, but like his dreams of like that's all that he wants out of everything that's going on here. And obviously there's the parts where he's talking about like he'll finally have a seat on the Jedi Council, but like it's interesting to me to think about Anakin's goals, because even if they do win the war, right, like let's say everything worked out the way it was supposed to be and they won the war and Anakin got his seat on the council, what does he do from there? Like his entire life is built on going through these he is a product of war. And I know like in the Ahsoka series, Anakin is like when I was a Padawan, it wasn't like this, but like he was still going on missions and doing all of this stuff with Obi-Wan. And there was so much turmoil during his time as a Padawan before he was a general in the Clone Wars and the Clone Wars began. Like from the time of really Qui-Gon's death all the way through here, like it's been nonstop for him. It's a freight train that he's riding on for the entirety of his character. So I guess my thing is like, I don't even think he understands what he really wants. Like, yeah, he can save everyone, but if he's just sitting there on the council and the war is over, Anakin's going to be pretty bored the rest of his life. I'm certain. Like, what else is he going to do? He's proven that he's the chosen one. He sits on the council, that he just sits there for the rest. What is he? He's 26 now. Like he just lives the rest of his life as just a guy on the council.
I think the change of point for him is why he buries himself so much in the war is when Padme reveals that she is pregnant, right? And
absolutely.
That's where, like, if that were to happen, that's obviously what he would do. He'd be like, well, I don't really care, like, because then he's like, I don't care about being a Jedi anymore. Like, I want to make ourselves known, and like he's doing everything he can to save her and to be with them. And really the only reason, which is a great point that's never mentioned in the movie, and I'd heard about this before, and when it was brought up, I was like, oh, this is really cool, is the reason he wants mastery so bad is so that he can get access to the archives, right? So that he can maybe find that information. And once Palpatine presents that opportunity, he doesn't care really about being a master anymore. Like, the only reason he cares about being a master is because they don't trust him, but he doesn't necessarily care about the rank. And there's even a point in the book where he's just like, yeah, I really don't care about being a master at this point, you know? Like, it's all about saving her. It's the obsession. It is the tunnel vision of literally nothing else matters except saving her and not betraying my friend Palpatine, because Palpatine is the one that's the only one that's cared about me, you know?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just Anakin's character throughout all of this, like from the time that we meet him all the way up until his turn for Vader, and then and I don't even mean just his turn for Vader, where like Order 66 happens and all that. I mean like when he is in the suit, he is jumping from end goal to end goal, and they are all such like, I'll have it and it's over. I'll have it and it's over. And right at the end, he doesn't save Padme. And I feel like even if he did, how Anakin lives his life as Vader in that suit, he truly is much like he is a pawn, and to use the word a slave again, to Palpatine. I feel like he's just a slave to his own emotions when it comes to all this stuff. That just like, that's what I mean when I say like, what is he just going to be, a guy on the council when he gets everything he wants? It's just like, I think him especially, he's constantly just chasing cars. And I think that's the biggest thing that Palpatine takes advantage of. It's the, oh, what do you want? Like, oh, Padme? Okay. Oh, you could be a hero. Like, it's just feeding into those things. And Anakin, like I said, is just chasing cars when it comes to those desires.
Yeah.
Well, I think Anakin also, he lies to himself constantly. And I think that we have to be cautious as viewers and readers to believe him. When he said, like, for example, when he says in my favorite show, the Obi-Wan show, when he says Anakin is gone, that's not true. He's lying to himself because it makes him feel better. He has to believe these lies he tells himself. And the person who I think knows Anakin's inner self the most is Obi-Wan, and you see that in the scene when he goes to see Padme, and he says exactly what you were just talking about, Will, where he's like, you can't let him leave the Order, not because we need him or anything, but because he will crumble without it.
Yeah,
he needs it. He needs to be a Jedi. He needs the structure. He needs the Order. And I love that he even gives Padme sort of the permission, if you will, at the end to say, you could do, if he must leave the Order, then protect him, and do what's best for him, because Obi-Wan did truly love him. But I think you're right. I don't think it matters what Anakin does. That's why it's never really about Padme. I mean, it's the Walter White Heisenberg thing. He gets to the end that he says, when Skylar's looking at him and says, like, if I have to hear one more time that you did this for the family, and he finally admits to himself that, no, I did it for me because I was good at it. That's Anakin. I think finally, if we ever in some Elseworld story got that moment where Anakin could reconcile with Padme, it would go very similarly. Like, if I have to hear one more time, this is about saving me, he would say, no, I did it for me because I was really good at being a warrior.
Yep.
And that's the tragedy, is that without a war, it's like Captain America, right? Without a war, what is he?
It's true. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to also point out that I think the book does a great job of just showing that he is immature, and that like he is a little kid that is essentially, for lack of a better term, a gun. That like that's just, and like he really, and the other crazy thing is the three important things in his life are all pulling him in three different directions, and he wants to please everybody. And so I do find it really interesting, so that they're like, it doesn't surprise me that he was able to get played like a fiddle.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is like he'll go to one side and be like, hey, they're like, hey, like, you can't trust him. He's like, yeah, you're right. Like, oh, what am I thinking? Yeah. And then he'll go to Palpatine, and Palpatine's like, oh, they're saying this. And he's like, oh yeah, you're so true. Oh my goodness. And he'll go to Padme, and he's like, no, yeah, I need to save you. Like, that's what matters. And obviously I'm exaggerating.
The whole thing is like, there's even thoughts of, he wants to be a master, but then also there's thoughts of like, let's just forget all this. Let's go raise our kid on Naboo.
Yeah.
That like it is really, really interesting that it's like he's a hero, but at the same time not a great person, if that makes any kind of sense.
He's a hero for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
And he's a gun. You gotta a gun can be pointed in the right direction. That's that, some not so nice people, and that can and you could look at that as a great act of sacrifice and a great act of heroism, or the gun can be pointed in another direction, and that's all Anakin is. It just depends on where he's pointed.
In this
Vader
case,
becomes a gun.
Well, I mean, in Anakin's case, unfortunately, the gun was pointed back at himself, and then hence Vader. And it is,
Well, all these people kept making the gun bigger and bigger and bigger. He started out as a BB gun, you know, when it doesn't really matter if he might hurt himself, but at the end of the day, you know, it's not that dangerous. But now by the end of it, Darth Vader is a nuke.
Yes.
And where are you going to point that? It doesn't matter at that point. You're not a hero anytime you point a nuke somewhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, what were you going to say?
What I was going to actually switch up stuff.
Okay.
Because we've been talking a lot about the deep lore of the Iliad, the Odyssey of how this book is. Another part of Star Wars that I truly think is critical to making good Star Wars is the humor of Star Wars. And Matt Stover does such a good job with those like little funny moments throughout this book where like it might be a little cheesy, but the one that comes to mind off the top of my head is like when Obi-Wan wakes up in the elevator and it's just like the description of like he's staring at Anakin's butt. Like just like the way, look, Star Wars is so deep and it's so mythological and we can talk about all that stuff, but like that like mirrored with like just funny little like droidisms or like Anakin perfectly. One of my favorite parts of this book, it's because of the deleted scene where Anakin can speak droid, is when Anakin does a perfect impression of Obi-Wan and Palpatine laughs at him when it's the three of them. Like that is awesome. That like, and Anakin is immature to Seth's point, but like that he is so charismatic is phenomenal. And I think that those are the moments when I say earlier of like Anakin being so much more like the Matt Stover, or not Matt Stover, the Matt Lanter of like Clone Wars Anakin versus like the Hayden of like Attack. Not to say Hayden isn't charismatic. I think that's one of the best things about Anakin's character in the movies, but like I don't know, there's just there's a gunslinger element to him come the end of the Clone Wars that I think gunslinger, but you guys refer to him as a gun. That is just, it's so good, and it makes much like a Maul character, really, of like you hate to love this guy. It's kind of like you know where he's headed, but you're like, I can't wait to see it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's as much as it is a tragedy, and people make that joke of like when Revenge of the Sith was re-released, people were like, yeah, I went and saw Revenge of the Sith, Anakin still turned. Like, isn't that a bummer? Like, yeah. But we're all watching to see that. Like, that's what we want to see happen. That's why all of the marketing using all of this is Darth Vader's helmet. Like, that's in all of the trailers and everything. Everybody wanted to see how it happened. And I think that's what makes all of this so good. It's like, yeah, it is a tragedy. And yeah, it is a bummer. But like, man, you love to see it happen.
Like, it's like the whole like train wreck or car crash, like like it's you can't help but look sort of thing. Like I don't know, it's especially because we go ahead, Connor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, since you brought that up, Will, I do have a question to the panel here. I think the humor gets a bit much in the third act, though. Am I the only one?
That was my third act, as much as it is. Yeah, I think I kind of feel the same way about the third act as you, Connor. It's like I said, where like the Anakin through line of like, if you were to watch Clone Wars season 7 and then read the beginning of this book and then watch the end of the movie, that's probably like the best like three-way punch that you're gonna get for it. But like,
I could agree with that. Yeah.
The end of the book is so much better as a movie for like a majority of the end of the book. And yeah, I liked it and what it gave to a lot of the scenes, and obviously you get character perspectives and POVs and stuff like that. But like, when I think of Revenge of the Sith, I think of the end of the movie, and for it to like, I guess for me, it's an incredibly high bar to like hit or even like come close to. And as much as I love this book, kind of to your same point, Connor, like there's stuff that the book does well, but like the third portion of this book is so much better as a movie.
Yeah. The couple that stand out to me is I really this was my first big eye roll for the book. I was having such a great time until the Yoda as a baby scene.
That one I knew about that going into it. I did not like
that at all.
So dumb.
I didn't think that's where that was going, because I was like, okay, what are we looking at here? Like, is this just some vagrant or something on the streets of Coruscant? And then it was Yoda. I'm like,
he's like, my lightsaber, you will see.
Exactly. I'm like, no, that's not.
It's not necessary at all
at this point. The movie, you have fun moments, you're having a good time, you're getting the humor and everything, but then the third act, it locks it in. It's like, no, this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah, it's not. This is the end of the war.
I guess
you
that's
get some humor,
a little relief, but it's not Yoda as a baby going like, my lightsaber this is, and then throwing it at a clone. That's crazy. I don't like that. I think that needed to stay serious. And then the other one, this is a less, but it took me out of it when one of the separatists is like, Sidious promised us a handsome reward, and then
and he's like, am I not handsome enough?
Like, shut up, Vader. You got a reputation to uphold right now. What is this?
Like at that point, like Anakin should just like, he's not saying anything. Like the moment of him being there, and I mean that's like one of like the two moments where he has the full Sith eyes. Like he's not quipping, bro. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, because in the movie, that's one of my favorite. Seth and I have talked about this. This is something you don't like very much, but I love it when he slashes the Nemoidians and he's like crying because of how hard it is for him to do this and just continuing to commit murder. There's that one shot in the movie where you really could see Hayden's face, and he's screaming in agony as he's like killing all of the separatists. And then now to contrast this with the book, and he's like, "Well, you don't think I'm handsome?" And it like stabs him in the neck. I'm like, "Whoa, what do you mean?"
Go ahead, Will.
I will say, I definitely, like you said, Connor, prefer like the emotion that Anakin's feeling, and you see that in the movie. I will say the quips from Anakin, like the "what, you don't think I'm handsome," remind me so much of like the Vader like funny humorisms that you see in the original trilogy. And even like I immediately think of like choke on your own aspirations and stuff like that. Vader's got jokes. And when it comes to the original trilogy, like I would say just to it's not even to his defense, but like Matt Stover is probably thinking of those Vader moments more than the Anakin moments that we know when writing stuff like this. That like I would like to think that in a moment like that, where the "what, you don't think I'm handsome," where he puts on the Riz face, like I would like to think he's thinking more of like the comical side of Vader with stuff in the original trilogy. Definitely prefer the like. One of my favorite things, and it's so niche, but like, is when people take scenes from Revenge of the Sith and then compare it to like Renaissance paintings of them being like just frames, and it just being, it's beautiful. Revenge of the Sith is beautiful. And moments like that where you're talking about where like Anakin's in tears because of the emotions he's feeling while he's going through with this, and he feels the needs to, but he also wants to, but that emotion to where he's just crying and it's just pouring out of him. I love that. But then I'm also like, yeah, but it makes kind of sense when you think about Vader later on. So it's that's the thing of like, there's things that the books does and there's things that the movie does where I'm like, I have preference. If I have to flip a coin. I agree
with that. And I'm seeing some people in the chat like Piatti Diddy is saying like apology accepted, Captain Nita. And then that scene, pull that one back up from Rave. Sidious promised us peace. His transmission was garbled, but he promised you in pieces. I'm like, brother, like
that one I do like.
That's what I mean. It's like some of it's kind of like, all right, bro.
But I'm like, hey man, this is serious. You're literally destroying your soul right now. And that comes with some levity. Like once he's in the suit and he's settled in it a little bit, and then some of the Vader sass comes in. I love that, but I'm just, maybe it's the contrast because the movie is so serious at this point.
Sure.
Oh, it's just deep.
I prefer him staring out into the lava, the tears streaming down his face, like mourning his own goodness, his own grace. Like, and then in the movie or in the book, he promised you in pieces, kill.
Yeah, it's
okay.
And obviously,
it's just, maybe that's just me.
You know, I like the pieces one, but the handsome one, I was like, what dog? I was like,
Yeah,
this is
sometimes it's a little much, but I'm not saying it's like completely. If it was somebody who didn't have the breadcrumbs of like what Vader was doing joking wise later on in the original trilogy, I'd be like, this is bonkers. Like, why are it that? I think that's why the Yoda as a baby thing feels so out of place. It's because like, what are we do? Like, Yoda's got jokes, but like, this is insane. But when it comes to Anakin, I'm like,
there's like I can see Obi-Wan. Like Obi-Wan is, he's such a he is the quippy guy. I've always it's such that like that I don't know, but like I feel like the whole that like Yoda as the baby scene like that I feel like that works. But if Yoda doesn't say anything, right, of it just being like here you go, and then Yoda just immediately like takes them out so they can get like sneak up there, like. Okay, fine. Would I like to see that on screen? Not really, but like
imagine if we saw that in the Clone Wars, that would get memed on so much
dude.
of Yoda
like
as a baby.
Yeah.
Well, I want to bring in y'all super chats from Piatti Diddy, but which is
Diddy,
insane. And I just this one actually this part I was like wow, but also I did kind of find funny, and I was like, you know what?
See, this is one of the humor moments where I'm like, that was hilarious, and like with what Will was saying, where like the deep descriptions of Anakin's butt for 3 pages.
Yeah, it's like all right.
It's just time and place, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like,
sure.
Star Wars, like Brownosaurus is saying, Star Wars camp stars without the camp. Absolutely. But time and place, guys. Time and place. Like, I wouldn't want anybody quipping on the Death Star 2 when Luke and Vader and the Emperor are having their big finale. Like, I don't need any humor there. I need that to be serious because it's a time and a place. But I definitely want to have some fun with the Ewoks. That's cool. Like, we need to have both. It's just peaks and valleys. You got to have a time and a place.
The extent of like human Return of the Jedi in the Death Star 2 would be like, which is not even, it's really Luke just being confident, but it is kind of that Obi-Wan charm of him being like, your overconfidence is your weakness, and it's like, that's him kind of in a humorous way, kind of biting back, but it's not like a ha funny joke, right? It's like you kind of smile at it as opposed to Ewoks, getting tugged around by ATSTs and stuff.
It's a film for 12-year-olds. That's true, but this book is definitely not.
Yeah.
Dude,
I will say too, like, one of the scenes that I always think of when it comes to like the humor in Star Wars is, and especially because a lot of this, as we said earlier, like around the same time of what was going on with Gendy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The one scene that I always think of from Gendy is when they're in the alleyway with 3PO and he drops the robes and like the sultry music plays and it's a wow 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 and you can like they see his reflection I think of that all the time because as a kid I was like, okay, this is bogus. I used to not like it as a kid, but now I'm older. I'm like, I get it. Like, it's the charm of Star Wars. It's funny, but stuff like that is like, it either grows with you over time. And I think with some memeable jokes when it comes to Star Wars, they definitely grow over time because so much of what gets memed on now with the prequels, people used as like evidence of why the dialogue in the prequels is the worst. But now we're like, oh, it's fun. Like, we love seeing these movies and we hope those lines are said.
That's kind of gotten to the point with me with like, and it's still because like some of them still like in the prequels, especially like the sand quote and stuff. But like you kind of the memes part of it are so iconic and part of that fandom. Like one that honestly is kind of grown on me because of how funny it is the "they fly now" moment in Rise of Skywalker. People say that to me all the time, and I just like laugh and I'm like, you know what? It's part of like, is it dumb? Yeah, but it's part of the charm now.
Yeah,
yeah. Definitely can have some of those moments for sure.
Yeah, so it grows on you. I've got a slew of, and by the way, before I get too far, we have a lot more people in here. Thank y'all for being so active in the chat. We are reading them. We're picking them up as they are applicable to the conversation. But we're giving away this copy right here, Revenge of the Sith.
Look at the pinned comment on our stream if you're in ours. Hashtag ROTS20.
Hashtag, type that in the chat. You will be entered in the giveaway. Right now, we only have 12. Actually, I think technically we only have 9 entries because 3 of them are us. So, and
I hope I win.
And you do have to at least be following me on Instagram because once you have to be here in the chat and like reach out to me.
Wow,
so
rigged.
Details.
Wow, rigged.
Guys, also I'm 4 followers away from 1K. So if y'all want to
go follow him right now.
Go follow Mortis FM.
Yeah, but no,
Mortis FM.
really just,
Perfect time.
and you have to be here when we do the drawing, which we'll be wrapping up in about an hour or less. So be here if you're here in the chat, and we can square it away. But yeah,
If you view Attack of the Clones as a soap opera, it is a soap opera. That's the whole point.
It is. Yeah, there's like Star Wars has like I think about it like all the time of like I think it's in Empire Strikes Back that he goes like, "Hooah, we got him!" You know, like there's so many like fun moments like that, like where you're like, this is so corny and I love it, man. We didn't talk about that. We talked about it a little bit, but one moment that people brought up a lot in chat earlier is the chapter of Dooku speaking to Palpatine before they have that fight.
We're on the same wavelength, Grayson. I was just about to bring that up.
Wow. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
Here's what I got to ask. Did you guys know that Dooku was so racist? Like, brother, that was crazy. I was like, let's chill with the droid phobic remarks, brother. Like, you're really
What did he say?
Dude, they go in detail. He's like, disgusting creatures. Like, how horrible.
Oh,
Anakin's not.
Anakin's a subhuman because he doesn't. Because he's missing the appendage,
and that's why they pitted all of the separatists as like aliens. Is because they wanted the Galactic Republic had to be led by men, and not. And not all those disgusting creatures.
Yeah, he talks about Grievous all the time. He's like, Grievous, like this wretched creature, and I'm like, oh, dang, okay.
Yeah, it's just I just found those descriptions to be so surprising because even Palpatine's like, bro, chill. Like, we don't do that over here.
Go ahead, Will.
So I posted a clip talking about Dooku getting his hands cut off like probably 2 months ago. And that clip has a ton of comments because I'm specifically talking about like the moment he gets his hand cut off, of like the fear and the realization of like, oh my gosh, everything that's happened my entire life has been to set up this guy doing this to me, of Anakin winning and me losing. I was a pawn. But so many people were trying to correct me on that. And maybe this is part of it. But so many people were trying to correct me on what Dooku is thinking there, of that face of fear, rather than it just being like, yeah, he got his hands cut off. And I do read into it a lot, where he's obviously thinking of everything that's happening in that moment. But so many people were telling, like, I would say probably a third of the comments on all of those videos are people saying the reason why he's so aggravated in that moment and so terrified is because now he also has to have robotic limbs if he was to live in that moment and have robotic hands, because like he was so racist that now he is a subhuman and he has to live with hands just like Anakin. And I've always made the joke of like, and so many people do as well, of like Anakin got his get back twice over because Dooku took his hand. He's like, I'm gonna take both and your head. Like, even if he was to survive having those robotic limbs. But like, I think we're talking about like how Shakespearean and how like Greek mythology this book is, and that scene right there of like, you can look at Christopher Lee's face of him in terror, and obviously it's like, yeah, he's terrified because he just got both his hands lasered off, but he's also like that rush of emotion of everything in his life being a lie, that I think is why a movie like this is so good, and why Star Wars is so good, is because moments like that are filled with an entire character's life worth of emotions in just that one frame.
Yeah. Go ahead, Seth.
I think it's interesting too, because like in the book it describes too that like Dooku realizes who's actually talking in the chair. That wait, that's not Palpatine, or that's not Palpatine. That's Darth Sidious talking to him. And I think too that's that look on that face, that it's just like, oh my gosh, that like it really is that like realization that like, I've been getting wore down these 3 years. I was ready to retire, and now this, I guess, retirement's coming really, really early. So,
That's what was most surprising to me during that whole section, is how it frames Dooku very much as like he's not a villain. He definitely views himself as he had to pose as a villain. He's like, I've been so tired of playing the villain for so long. I'm almost looking forward to being captured so that I can relax for a little bit, and then I can be the hero again. I found that very surprising, that like he doesn't believe in the separatist cause at all. He's like, no, I'm just a figurehead for the Sith until we can rebuild our government.
He's basically
together.
Because they say something along the lines, they bring it up a couple times, one from Dooku, but one later on of like, they have to kind of destroy the Republic to rebuild it, sort of thing. And that's more so what he's doing, because like he realized, we kind of see this a little bit in Tales of the Jedi, but like how much dissent he has had growing towards the Republic, because he used to be a big believer in the Republic. Kind of that weird foil to like Mace Windu, of like how much he cares about that, but of course he's playing the figurehead of this villain, which is great as well.
Great mirror to Mace Windu, because Mace Windu has the exact same thought later, where he's like, "Man, I guess we have to dismantle this in order to rebuild it, and we have to rebuild it the way we need to rebuild it." And it gives a lot of validity to Palpatine's argument that the Sith and the Jedi are
not very different.
Not very different, are the same in almost every way, especially in their pursuit of greater power.
Yep.
It's very true. They're almost identical. Someone brought this up in the chat earlier, but like to cap that point off, it was a while ago, but how there's a moment when they're going to arrest Palpatine. They're like, "You're a Sith Lord." He's like, "So?"
Yeah.
That's not illegal.
I was going to say,
yeah.
what?
He's like, "What's the crime?"
He's like, "That's towards that."
And that, I thought that was so good. I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's true." He's really playing against.
He says it's like in the Constitution. He's like, there's nothing that says that's a crime, like, and I'm like,
yeah.
Well, I guess.
I just imagine that had to. I wish the book would have went a little further into it. What Mace was thinking in that moment, because they were all about, we have to find the Sith Lord, and then they do, and they call him out, and he's like, "What are you gonna do about it? Like, it's not illegal. I could be a Sith Lord and the Chancellor. So." Are you going to destroy the Republic to arrest me? It's it's perfect. I think that's why Palpatine isn't worried at all, because he's like, "What are you going to do, man? Okay, you arrest me, then what?
Yeah,
like, let's say you're successful
arrest me,
with that.
or you kill me, and then like all of the senators that I have in my pocket are going to turn on you. Like, so it's still like he's got all of these backup plans on backup plans. He's like, and of course Anakin is the crux of that, but he's like, He's like, I mean, there's like you said earlier, there's a chance that he's wrong, but like, he's like,
well, they bring it up several times about the Jedi trap, the perfect Jedi trap.
Yep,
that's it. Because the last time that Stover brings it up, it says, the perfect Jedi trap is where it doesn't matter if it's them playing at all means that they lose, and that's the scenario right there. There's the Jedi trap. The Clone Wars is the Jedi trap, and all they had to do was play to lose. It's crazy.
Yeah. By the way, just want to shout out MacMan here. Thank you.
That's why my hand's up. I was looking to refresh to see if you got the 1,000.
I'm at 1K. Let's go. Dude, that's it. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Hey, we'll give away a second book if Grayson gets up to 2,000 by the end of the stream.
All 1,000 people that are in the chat. Oh, someone earlier asked, her like, "Will you all sign it if I ask?" And I was like, that would require a lot of shipping between all of us, but if you wanted to, I guess. There was something.
We ain't special.
Depreciates in value. Oh, dude. Speaking of another moment of like great character work is when they go to the bridge in the opening, and it's Obi-Wan, his perspective of like, this is Obi-Wan in the light. And there's so many moments of how he's this vessel of the Force, and it's not him fighting, it's the light side. I'm like,
so cool.
Oh,
really
dude.
awesome.
That's what I'm like. I've always been Obi-Wan. Like, I've always liked Obi-Wan, but I'm like, dude, has this book just made like Obi-Wan skyrocket for me as one of my favorites?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man.
Dude, and how another great Obi-Wan moment is when they're on the council and they're like, "Man, we got to send our best Jedi to go fight Grievous." And Obi-Wan's like, "Bro, I agree. Who we sending?" And everybody looks at him and they're smiling. I loved that, dude. So good. Yeah, that description of him in the light, and then the contrast of describing how Anakin is and how Obi-Wan is a vessel for the Force, but Anakin wrestles control over it. And showing, I mean, that's
like a Sith.
Yeah, like a Sith, like a Sith. And like Palpatine brings this up later. Like, all these themes are so well done. It's crazy how they carry throughout the whole book. Like Obi-Wan's trick, I love the way that was written. How he's like, "Oh, yeah, just one little trick, the way to defeat Grievous. That maybe if he just reached into the Force, the part of him that was Grievous's hand, and reversed the polarity, then his hand would fly open. And I love it. Just it's such a quirky description of it, and I think that's really fun. But then later, you get a massive payoff when he's fighting Anakin, and it says, "But Obi-Wan's got a little trick, though." And he does the same thing to Anakin's hand, and that's what makes him drop the lightsaber. I was like, man, so good.
Yeah, it's like it describes the way the Force. And granted, we'll never know fully like how the Force works as well, and they do acknowledge that, but like just his continuity of being this like truly, like we said, how Anakin is this tool, Obi-Wan is like this tool of the Force, and it's like my favorite moment. I remember what I was about to bring up because my dad told me about this years ago, and I had always wondered what book it was in, and so when I got to it, I was like, this is so awesome. He talked about my dad did about there's a moment in the book where he's talking to Mace Windu, and they bring it up when it's right before he's about to fight Grievous. Like I think he's on Utapau, and then it kind of cuts back of like a conversation that him and Mace Windu have before he leaves, and he's like, Mace Windu is really good at like Vapad, like that's the one that he made, and like the kind of like being really immersed in the fight, and kind of giving into that small inkling of darkness, and then Yoda needing that, like he does this because he's a smaller stature, but like you this is what you're good at, like you are like you're the master of this, and he's like, oh well, I appreciate you saying that I'm a master, and he's like, no, you're the master of this. And I remember my dad telling me that years ago and being like, that's why he excels in the simplicity, and it's like, and I think that kind of describes Obi-Wan's character perfectly, of like he kind of is the Jedi, dude. Like when you think of like the tentpole like cookie cutter, and not cookie cutter in a bad way, of like what it is to be like a tried and true Jedi, he is the master of that. I mean, truly, he was the first Jedi we ever saw in Star Wars.
Yep.
Yeah. He's the best of all of them, for sure. Like the best parts of Qui-Gon, of Yoda, of Mace Windu.
Man. Yes, Will.
Respect.
If I can just read this portion from
Please.
The beginning of chapter 7, just because I just highlighted it. And like there's stuff where I write notes. I just highlighted it because I was like, this is just so awesome. So it's the part that you brought up, Grayson. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi in the light. And then it goes on to say, he doesn't bother to raise his eyes to meet the cold yet low stare fixed on him through a skull mask of armorplast. That's what it is.
Armorplast.
He doesn't even need to reach into the Force. He has already let the Force reach into him. The Force flows over him and around him as though he has stepped into a crystal pure waterfall lost in the green coils of a forgotten rainforest. When he opens himself up to that sparkling stream, it flows into him and through him and out again without the slightest interference from his conscious will. The part of him that calls itself Obi-Wan Kenobi is no more than a ripple, an eddy in the pool into which he endlessly pours. And for him to be the first Force ghost that we see on screen is so sick when you think about how he is already there and he doesn't even have the training with Qui-Gon yet at this point. So cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to read the passage as well on the same thing. Of course, it's more about lightsaber, because they bring up a lot about lightsaber forms, which are like a big deal in Legends, and they are canon, but still. He's Mace Windu almost smiled. I created Vapad to answer my weakness. It channels my own darkness into a weapon of the light. Master Yoda's Ataru is an answer to weakness, the limitations of reach and mobility imposed by his stature and his age. But for you, what weakness does Surisu answer? Blinking, Obi-Wan had been forced to admit he'd never actually thought of it that way. That is so like you, Master Kenobi, the Corran master had said, shaking his head. I am called a great swordsman because I invented a lethal style. But who is greater, the creator of a killing form or the master of the classic form? I'm very flattered you would consider me a master, but really, not a master, the master, Mace had said. Be who you are, and Grievous will never defeat you. And then I'm going to cut ahead where he says, Obi-Wan simply is who he is.
Obi-Wan's the man.
Dude, he's the GOAT, bro. Like, I love him, man. And
isn't it awesome that we got a sequel to this story in that 6-part Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus that you can watch, at any time? Isn't that great? That's so good.
Maybe we need to read the Kenobi book. I actually do.
Is there
I do
one?
really want. Yeah.
Oh, the Legends one.
Yeah, well, and that is the thing is, so someone was bringing up of like the differences of like, yeah, obviously this was written in a lot of continuity of the Clone Wars multimedia initiative. Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, the several books that came out before this one, including a lot of acknowledgments to the other Matthew Stover book, Shatterpoint, and then Labyrinth of Evil by James Luceno, and then obviously this is sort of leading into Rise of the Dark Lord. And then of course even mentions of like the comic book series, right? So like that was kind of all of the different points. But it's still like, and it's cool to like be like, oh yeah, like this was still very much written in the continuity of Legends, but still there's so much of this book of like when you strip away the Legends like kind of acknowledgments that still very much fit into canon. Of course, other than maybe like Anakin, like the and the relationship with Ahsoka, but like even then, by the time of Revenge of the Sith, like he's not really actively thinking about Ahsoka at that point. Like he's pretty focused on what's happening with the war, what's happening with Obi-Wan and Padme and Palpatine. And yeah, Ahsoka played a part in that, but like especially when you start off the book of like them flying in, right? And we now know in canon like he had just come back from like sending Ahsoka off to Mandalore. We're not going to get an acknowledgement of that, but when you strip that away, I think it's still considered on Lucasfilm's website like a semi-canon book, basically. Like, because it's still, it's not like they're going to make another like canon novelization of it.
No, right? You don't need to.
Yeah, it's like it works, and you might be reading it and you're like, I'm confused. Like, I don't really know. Because I remember the first time that I started like listening to it like a while back was when it first opens and it was like Depa Billaba and Sora Bulk had fallen to the dark side. And I was like, I was like, Depa Billaba, what? I was like, she falls to the dark side. Then someone told me what happens in that Shatterpoint book. Yeah, that book is wild. Like, and granted, Depa Billaba was a much different character back then. Yeah, but yeah, Will.
I'm going to pose this to everybody here and everybody in the chat and anybody later on who listens to this after it's posted months from now. What the heck happened on Jabeam that is referenced so many times throughout this book?
You know this, don't you?
And Jabeam and Argonar, right?
No? Oh, I thought,
maybe. I don't know.
Is that not
in the comics? Republic comics?
Oh, I don't remember.
Because they also talk about. Well, I'm gonna find out right now for you, Will. I'm gonna look.
Yeah, here, Seth, you were being very patient while Grayson's reading that.
Yeah, I mean, we're so far past.
Like, go ahead.
That's the whole thing.
No, go ahead.
I just think that the Force throughout a lot of throughout all of Star Wars is described by like a lot of things. I think it's best described when it's with water.
Yep.
That like, it being a river or a waterfall or a still pond, or like, I just think that is like how I envision the Force.
It is.
So,
I was speaking on that, Seth. The Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, which is the first High Republic adult novel, has a lot of allegory of how different Jedi view the Force. And one of the main characters, he views it like an ocean, of how widespread it is and how how tumultuous it can be, but how still it can also be.
And one of my favorite parts of the Darth Bane book is when he's sitting and talking about, and he's like, think of the Force as one giant river, and there's all these stems. But what if we made it so there's only one, or there's only two stems? Think about how much we could siphon from it then. And I'm just like, dude, that's crazy to think about. I've drawn that like at a restaurant because someone asked me, they were like, the rule of two's stupid. I'm like, no, it's not. Here, I'm going to show you. And I've like drawn
it on river. It's great.
I know. No, I drew it on a napkin. I drew like a tree, and I go, but then when one guy comes along and goes, hey, what if I took all of this to everybody and then I just made it go down to one or two big streams? And it was just like, think about that. And they're like, okay, that is way cooler. And I was like, see, there's reason to the madness.
Mm-hmm. So Argonar was in the Republic comics from Republic 58, 59, and 61, and it is mentioned in Labyrinth of Evil, but does not appear. And then Jabeam, according to also the chat, people are saying, I think they're both from, Jabeam also is in the Kenobi series, which is...
I was going to say, watch that if you want to know about what happens on Jabeam.
Jabeam in Legends was mentioned in mentioned in the like Kestis or Cestus deception, and then it appears in Republic 55 through 62.
Oh, not to. I mean, this is an awesome name. Billy Bob is saying Jabim was in the comics right with Alpha. Is that what's going on when he's with Alpha there? He's the dude who's like Proto Rex, right?
Yeah.
In the comics.
Yeah.
Is that the fight with Dirge?
I read the comics. I can't tell you.
Yeah, I have not read those. They're mentioned in like Yoda Dark Rendezvous and MedStar and like a lot of those different things.
I read them once a long time ago, but it all blurs together. That it's like,
it is those people. There are the fan base for those Republic comics of the Clone Wars are huge. Some people, because that was like other than it was Gindy's, and that was the Clone Wars, you know.
Oh yeah, no, and that was, I remember getting them at the comic book store because like you know, you could either watch it or you could read it, and you got more of this. It felt, because since the Gindy stuff was so short.
I'll be real. I've been doing a lot of just kind of deep dives on that era. It's part of me that Grace and I were talking about this a few days ago. Part of me that, depending on the day, I prefer it. I don't know. It's just, it feels very streamlined about our main characters. Like, it feels very much like a continuation from Attack of the Clones. We're going to see what these characters were up to during the Clone Wars. It's really focused on them. And then we get to Revenge of the Sith, where there's a lot of carry through. And I like tonally, it's very consistent.
It's very much like, this is war, you know?
Yeah. Where it's like in current canon Clone Wars, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but that was more of like a world building event. I feel like where it's really focusing on the characters like Ahsoka and Captain Rex, which are great. I mean, I love those two characters so much. I'm so glad that they exist. But there is a world though that I do prefer.
You like Captain Fordo?
I love Fordo. I like Alpha, and I kind of like things being simpler. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting too that like Clone Wars 2008, written in hindsight after everything, and then being like, well, we can expand on all this other stuff, when like 2000 or the Clone Wars Multimedia Initiative is like, you know, they're in the heart of it, where it's like, we got to write it now because in, you know, a year and a half the movie's out, so you've got this much time, we can get so many books and we can get so many comics written, and we can have a video game. So we can have Grievous at the end of this video game.
And Republic Commando.
Will.
No, I was just going to go back to Seth's point about water. I think one of the coolest reasons why like it being described as water is so awesome is because of George's influences with Taoism, and Wu Wei being the focus of like non-action is action, or like effortless action, which is always described as like the way of water. So just like that is, and then you look at like somebody like Qui-Gon and the first part of his name being Qigong, which is also like throughout like a spirit and balance with Taoism. Like, I just think that is the whole natural flow excess part of it, and how like, I forget the name of the book, but like where people believe that George took the term the Force from, that was very big in the 70s while he would have been writing A New Hope. It's just extremely cool. I think like, I love the way, especially Revenge of the Sith, I think where it shines and it's highlighted most, when you talk about stuff like the Christianity aspects of Anakin and the Chosen One and Jesus and all of that stuff, but then you also can take like other religious aspects from like Taoism and Buddhism and that sort of balance, that it's all mixed together. It's extremely cool, and it's all like, George Lucas was pretty much just like, what if I just took the best parts of all of it and made it into one guy with lightsabers? You know what I mean? It's extremely cool.
It makes it universal, so anybody can get stuff out of it.
And it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, if you'll forgive the point of view, but morality is objective, at least in my opinion, and that has to come from something. And so naturally, a lot of cultures have kind of taken that idea of morality, and it's like a campfire, to go back to that, you know, different campfires have different descriptions. You know, you may get things that talk about water, you may get things that talk about other things and gods and monsters and things like that. So I do love that it takes a lot of the Eastern culture influence with the deity that is the Force, if you will. I don't know that it's a loose
term.
that's a loose term, I suppose, but I like that it takes that, and it's not like the Force isn't God, I like that aspect to it. I think that makes it very, very interesting, and especially once you start getting into like chosen ones and things like that.
Well, even afterlife's becoming part of the water.
Well, it's like the characters themselves are almost godlike figures in some ways. Like we were mentioning how Palpatine is like a satanic. He's a dark.
He's a shadow.
Yeah.
Literally a shadow. Like the description of all of the times of him being a shadow, and like especially with the first appearance of like the chair, and then him kind of separating. And then when he's fighting,
oh my gosh!
When he's fighting Mace, and they keep calling him the Shadow. Right,
they're both moving so fast that they just see him as a blur of red and a blur of purple.
Yeah, I was like, because someone,
amethyst, please.
Yeah, dude. When he says amethyst blade, I'm like, all right, that does go hard. I won't even.
No, I think it's so stupid.
What? Come on, there's synonyms. And then also, again, what I said earlier with when he's like giving Anakin these ideas, like the sun is like behind Palpatine, and he's like, all he can see is like the gleam from his eyes, and it's just this shadowy figure. I'm like,
he's always wearing a hood.
Oh, that is. I'm like, it's this. The way this book handles characters they just skyrocket for me. Where I'm like, dude, like I can't even like. Obviously, Palpatine is a bad dude, but I'm like, he is such a good villain, man. Like I don't. Yep. It's so. Yes, Seth.
Well, it makes it almost like this book kind of like almost brings him into like Sauron territory, where like he's like rotting things that are around him.
Oh yeah,
and then it makes him seem like he's like a force of nature. Like I've always felt like that with Sauron. Like that's the big difference between him and Palpatine. Like Palpatine's like a bad dude, but like Sauron sitting in Greenwood turned it to Mirkwood. Like him just being there. But like this book does make it seem like that, Palpatine is a shadow. He is literally rotting everything around him. And then when Vader wakes up in the suit, the shadow is waiting for him. And it's just like, that is just crazy that the shadow is always there.
I mean, it kind of likens to why the Jedi were so blinded, right? Is because Palpatine he was able to hide that signature of himself when he's literally a foot in front of their face, and yet he's sitting there for years, and the darkness is corrupting Coruscant to where the Jedi. I mean, it kind of also like how the wars started and everything. It's so good, dude. Like you're like, God, Palpatine is such an amazing villain.
So Grayson, what you were just saying about that how this book covers character reminds me of that conversation we had with Timothy Zahn, where he said that he could take anything that was written, like if he could take whatever they do with Thrawn, for example, and if he was given that, he could make a really good continuation. He could explain anything away. You know what I mean? So what I feel like Stover does with Revenge of the Sith is he took the screenplay as it was. He's like, I don't need to change anything here. Maybe he didn't like aspects to it. Maybe there were things that he didn't like, but he said, I can make this so much deeper in the confines of the story, rather than trying to change things here and there. Like, you know what, this doesn't make much sense. I'm going to change this part so that it fits better with this part. Because some novelizations do that, or they add extra things,
embellish.
But this doesn't really do that. It just tells you what's going on in a character's head, and I think that's such a good approach to a novelization. Like I think about the Rise of Skywalker novelization, which I've not read the whole thing, but I've read excerpts, and they add things in that to make it make sense more. That's fine. It works better in that, to be fair. But I appreciate how Stover approached this. Was like, I don't need to change anything. I'm just going to show you what's happening in people's heads, and that's going to make everything so much better. And I don't know, I just really respect that.
Yeah. No, I was about to say there was one time, I don't remember where I saw this, but like Matthew Stover was talking about The Last Jedi. And you could tell, like, because he's written for Luke before and he's written for these characters before, he talked about like the moment of like what he saw, and even if that wasn't fact, he's like, because he has that experience of seeing what's in their head, he's like, well, the way I always saw Luke in this moment of when he does the thing with Ben Solo is he saw all of this, and I'm like, well, now I'd kind of be interested to see, like, I mean, yes, there's a Last Jedi novelization, so maybe I'd be interested to read that specific passage, but I'd love to see like, okay, the confines of the story, obviously people have a lot of problems with it, but for him to be like, Yeah, because when the prequels came out, people had problems with Anakin's fall. They were like, "This is really quick. This is really fast." And reading this, it's just like butter. It's so smooth. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I get it, right? So I'm like, I'd be curious to see what like again for further like problems that people have with movies, as you know, like you said, instead of adding on to things of just what it says about their mental state, because you get a lot from that from here. Yeah, Seth.
I do think it's really interesting though, because you're talking about like point of view characters and like getting like, you know, we never go into what Palpatine's thinking about though.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah,
that he chooses to never see what's going on inside, you know, the devil's mind.
Yeah, well, we don't get Yodas either, do we?
No, and I think that's interesting too.
Yeah, the avatars we don't get, as he describes them, the avatars of shadow and light. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't ever get this is Darth Sidious.
Yeah,
or this is Yoda as he exists in the light. Yeah, we never get those.
It's interesting.
I thought of that.
Just wanted to point that out.
I think for Palpatine, like specifically, that works well because it is kind of the way the galaxy and like characters like Mace Windu and Anakin, like nobody knows Palpatine's next move. So for us as readers, like if you didn't see Revenge of the Sith and you don't already know, like if this is for some reason in 2025, you have no idea what's going on in this book. You don't know anything about these characters.
Crazy.
Like the galaxy in a whole also doesn't know what Palpatine's next move and doesn't know what he's thinking at any point. So for us not to get that as a reader from like a literary tool where we don't see the inside of his head, I think is really cool. Yeah, where like the author himself is like, I'm not going to give that to you.
I mean, it emboldens the whole idea of like one being the light so blinding, right? Because Yoda is that figurehead of the Jedi, and one being the shadow of just this pitch black slate of like I mean, granted, of course, reading like something like Plagueis, you get so much in the headspace of Palpatine. Like I remember when he murdered his family, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just insane. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Yes, Seth.
No, Seth was first.
I was just gonna quick say that I like it too because it doesn't humanize Palpatine. It doesn't make you like sympathize for him. It's like, oh, this tragic guy, he can't be, but he's not that bad. No. In fiction, sometimes we just need, there's just bad dudes and bad gals out there. And sometimes we need that for stories.
Yes, we do. I agree.
Gosh.
Yeah.
I would say, like, yeah, everybody's gray. Heroes on both sides.
George has beef with you for that, for the opening crawl.
Yeah, seriously. I would say one of the like biggest like commandment rules of Star Wars is like Palpatine has to always be evil, no matter what he's doing. Like I would never want like Maul is probably my favorite like villain character in Star Wars, but it's because but Maul's story of like you feel bad for him at times, and it's like that you hate to love him sort of deal. And even with Anakin of like, yeah, his fall is tragic and like he becomes Darth Vader, but the whole time you're viewing him as Darth Vader, especially now, you're viewing like Anakin in the Clone Wars. So there's like a feel for that character. Palpatine should always be evil.
Yes.
Just 100% should always be evil. I did have a question for you guys though, because we talked about it earlier when we were talking about like, is the Chosen One prophecy and like did Anakin actually bring balance to the Force? I think in terms of just like viewing the numbers, Anakin going in and ridding the galaxy of Cal Kestis and Ahsoka, and like there's a bunch of other characters that survived Order 66, right? But when you think of just the movie at that time, the only two living Jedi at that point are Yoda and Obi-Wan, that we know of from Revenge of the Sith. And then you look at the other side and it's Palpatine and Vader, and they're the Sith. So like Anakin did kind of bring balance to the Force if you were just going to do like the math of it. You know what I mean? I know like
years to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go back and forth on this personally, where like I said earlier, there's a part of me that loves the simplicity. I love that the only two Jedi who survive are Obi-Wan and Yoda, and that Luke is truly the last of the Jedi, but the first of the new. But like I like that in this book. But it does get really, I don't know how I feel about when everybody else gets added in. It definitely feels like balance is not that. It's not equal parts light and dark, and like because this book really does treat it that way, where like the light casts an equally dark shadow, so it doesn't matter, so maybe it's better for the light to be small to cast a small dark shadow. But the reason I said I go back and forth is because I like that aspect, but then I also like the idea that balance of the Force is the elimination of the dark. Because that's interesting to me too, where the light side of the Force, there's no such thing as the light and the dark side. It's just the light side, and the dark side is sort of a corruption of the Force. Then I kind of prefer that too. And so in that way, Anakin becomes the chosen one at the end of Return of the Jedi. So I don't know. I go back and forth on which one I prefer. I take it, Will, you prefer the second.
No, I have always been if I was to if it was a trivia night and somebody was like, who's the chosen one in Star Wars, I'd say Anakin Skywalker, but like I like in my head what I think, and in my heart it's Luke. Bring balance at the end of Return of the Jedi. But then there's also, when you think of Rise of Skywalker, of Anakin speaking to Rey, of like, bring balance to the Force, bring back balance, like I did, like speaking to Rey in that moment. There's also like that weird portion too of like, is Anakin, when he's speaking to Rey in that moment, when like all the I am all the Jedi, is that Anakin referring to the end of Return of the Jedi when he's back, or is that when he defeats Palpatine, or is that like Revenge of the Sith, where he's the chosen one bringing balance to the Force? Of like, what is his deal there? If it's Return of the Jedi, that would make most sense, because then he's just like, hey, you could switch it out for like destroy Palpatine like I did, like throw him down a big old shaft like I did.
Well, it's also a thing of like, we don't, at least in this book, we don't ever hear strictly the prophecy, but they talk about it a lot of like, well, we don't know exactly what meaning like bring balance back to the Force means. Oh, it doesn't say he has to be a Jedi. This is what it says, blah, 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 blah. Have we misread it? It's also another one of the things of like, from what I understand, like it never says that whenever they reference the prophecy, it's never like the Force will stay balanced forever till the end of time.
Yeah, there can't be like more than one chosen one.
Right. And
I've always taken that the Rey moment I think people put too much stock into that. Like it does the original trilogy. I don't agree with that, because what the moment of Vader and Luke triumphing over Palpatine is so huge, because it destroys not only Palpatine, but everything the Sith for 2,000 years had been building. And so what we see in the sequels is this kind of attempt to re-spark that. And Rey is able to, and the team there is able to quash that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's on Roth's level in my book of all of the intrigue and the webs that are spun, but I never saw that moment in the sequels as that's when Palpatine's really defeated. It really seemed to me like, okay, he's trying to regather and trying to re-spark this, but he can't, because they quash it before it ever gets off. And that's how I've always viewed it. And I don't think that takes away from the chosen one being Vader or Luke. I think you could look at it either way in Return of the Jedi, where the balance is finally taken because they've destroyed the dark shadow that has been building for thousands of years. But that's just my take.
Merrick, we're going to do what we like. You don't have to like the sequels, but we're going to do what we like.
Thanks, buddy.
Sequels are fun to talk about sometimes. We got to read the Roth's novel or the Tross novelization sometime. I've actually heard it's pretty good. Yeah,
well, especially because I think the Rise of Skywalker movie cuts out a lot of the problem, like the main problems that people have with it. But I'll give a tiny tease that we will be diving into that era in our next book, but stay till the end of the stream to find out. And there's actually a connection to this book, which is huge, and y'all don't know about, and it blew my freaking mind. I've got a couple little points because I know we gotta wrap up here soon. But friendly reminder: giving away the copy. I'm not gonna pull it out right now. We're giving away the Revenge of the Sith copy. Hashtag ROTS20. Put it in the chat for your entry to win.
Also follow Grace on Instagram.
I'm at 1K now, so it doesn't matter. Well, actually, you probably do need.
No, it does matter. Give him a follow.
Go do it.
Get those numbers up.
Exactly. Pump them numbers.
I wanted to talk about both the moments of, and this is obviously a pretty popular moment, but when Obi-Wan, when Obi-Wan.
Oh yeah, wait a minute. Hey, before we move on, we didn't get Seth's take on the balance thing.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say I thought that we were gonna have a discussion. It's okay, but I mean we could.
No, I didn't know you had anything to say. Please.
Yeah, I didn't hear your opinion either, Grayson. We'll
I-
throw a question out to the class. We have
Come
the
on,
answer.
Grayson. He's too worried about getting his followers on Instagram. Listen. To him.
I just I've got there's other
1001.
no, with like the balance thing, like I don't overthink it, man. I don't know. Like it's a thing that it's never defined, so I don't need it to be defined. Like in the same way that like right now, or let me scroll back up where Gabby was like, I need an explanation of the Force. Like the Force doesn't like this. Like there's rules there, but like I don't need the Force fully explained to me. Like truly,
yes.
The only things that help for me in the Force is what Obi-Wan says in A New Hope and what Yoda says in Empire Strikes Back. That for me gives me everything I need to know about the Force, and beyond that, we won't know everything, and that's cool to me.
That's what another kind of personal pet peeve of mine when we start to hear about different things with the Force. It's like, oh well, Yoda blew up the tree in TLJ. That's never been shown before. Like, who cares? It's the Force, so that's what's interesting about it. It's because it's sci-fi, or rather, excuse me, it's fantasy. It's fantasy. Star Wars is not sci-fi. And when it's set in a sci-fi universe, but thematically the story is fantasy, and that's where like you don't need magic explained to you. Like when you watch Harry Potter, you don't need them to explain how the magic works. You know, if they do a new spell, it's because whatever, it just makes sense. That's a new spell because it's magic. And it's the same thing with the Force. The Force has loose rules, but really the Force is whatever the Force needs to be in the moment.
Yes,
Seth. Did you say your portion, or because
okay, so
you keyed up Grayson, but you didn't say.
I know. I totally think that he brought balance to the Force.
When?
What? Both times.
Oh, okay.
So there's lots of Jedi. Okay, he brings it down to 2 Jedi, and really 2 Jedi that are kind of like just hanging out, waiting for the 2 new babies to be the actual 2 Jedi to rise up and overthrow the Empire.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, but like how I view Luke is how I view Palpatine. It's like Palpatine helped Vader fall and start that prophecy, but Luke helped Vader rise and finish, or helped Anakin rise and finish the prophecy.
Okay.
That he destroyed the Sith by killing himself and killing Palpatine and bringing balance to the Force finally. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, I like
that's
that.
That's my head canon. Is that like I don't view Luke personally as the chosen one. I just choose like he's like Palpatine, where he was like key in bringing Anakin back to the light.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, I view Anakin as the chosen one because George Lucas said so. But like again, I'm not. If someone is to be like, well, this is why I think. Like, I don't think it's crazy to be like, oh, you know, Luke.
Story should be left up to interpretation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's what's fun about them.
We talked about this the other day, Connor, with like the Christopher Nolan thing about like the end of Inception. Right, where it's like he never tells anybody if it was a dream or not. You know, it's like,
yeah, and that's what's great. It's what a great story is. Yeah. Like Chris Nolan has always, whenever he's asked about the end of Inception, he never explains it. He's like, I know in my head, but you.
No, I thought we do. I thought his totem's his wedding ring, and he doesn't have it at the end.
That's an interpretation. We don't know.
Interpretation.
Okay, weird. I mean,
I thought the exact same thing as you said. I 100% thought the exact same thing as you, Seth. I was like, we don't know what it means.
That was it.
What did they say?
Okay,
I'm not okay. We'll talk about Inception later. I was like, I don't remember his wedding ring.
An author, I think a good author leaves it completely up to the audience, and they have to have something in their mind in order for them to craft a story.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure George has a lot of those things in his head, or maybe he doesn't. That's kind of the beauty of how George Lucas works, is he kind of wings it sometimes. And that's great. That's not a negative, because look at us. We've been talking for almost 2 hours. We take this stuff really seriously, and that's fun as fans. And that's fun to us. But it's just it for the creator of it, for an author of a story. I think that it's important to leave up things to your audience, and they can decide.
Yeah. No.
Will of the Force.
William.
I was going to say, just because I have to once a stream if we're talking about it. There's a Sam Witwer interview where he's he's talking about he was doing like a game stream and he's being asked about Qui-Gon's Force Ghost in Kenobi. And he's like, well, how does that make sense? He wasn't trained to do that. And he started explaining it as not so much the people who are the Force Ghost having that ability to appear. It's the people who see the Force Ghost allowing themselves to view what the Force is doing. So the example that he gives is Obi-Wan's appearance throughout the original trilogy to in A New Hope. All he does is hear, use the Force, Luke, trust in the Force, Luke, when he blows up the Death Star. Then the beginning of Empire, we see him as a murky vision on Hoth. And then you see him, what Sam Witwer says, he sits down, he's able to have a cup of coffee with him, basically. It's kind of that same thing. And then just to bring up another example of the sequels, it's like, Connor, like you said about the tree, or like the one that I feel like a lot of people always talk about is like, how could Luke catch the lightsaber when he was a Force Ghost? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, it's more about the interpretation of what the person viewing the Force Ghost is, because much like and not to define the Force at all here, but at least in my interpretation of it, what we read in that passage of Obi-Wan where the label of Obi-Wan Kenobi is a ripple in the Force, and it's gone. It's separated from the actual essence of what Obi-Wan Kenobi is through the Force. It is just a vessel. It is the exact same way as what we're talking about here with something like the Chosen One and who brings balance to the Force. I've always thought that not to get Indiana Jonesy on it, but the Chosen One prophecy is kind of like a Mayan prophecy or something like that, where it can keep happening and it moves to different people all the time, and or like I've kind of always thought of it like in 2012 when everybody was like yeah, exactly, or like in 2012 when everybody was like the world's gonna end, right? The Mayan calendar, it's like, well, actually they got it wrong, because if you go back and you do the math, it's like, well, the days were the sun was out longer then, so like days would have been it's like there's always something flowing around it of like why it wasn't working. So for the exact same reason why the Jedi are there's the shroud of the dark side that Palpatine used on them, much like all of us, none of us really know how the Force works. All of the Jedi, who even at Yoda, who is referred to as the Avatar of the Light, he also doesn't 100% understand how the Force works. I mean, maybe the Wills in the Clone Wars are the ones who really truly understand how the Force works.
Knows.
Yeah, the Hokie religions is ancient.
No, he even tells Finn that's not how the Force works.
I think it's just important that in the moment, whatever we're watching or whatever we're reading, it needs to make sense in the moment, and that's it. Yep. Because I stand by this. The stories, it's more important how they make you feel rather than what's logical. They should try to coexist, but if you have to pick one, like if you have something as enigmatic as the Force, then just pick one and pick the feel. I think that's way more important. Like to bring your 100%. Example, Will, of Luke catching the lightsaber. Thematically, that is a great moment. Yep. That is such a great through line. You can like or dislike his character in those movies. That's totally fine. But it is a complete moment for his character arc to catch that saber and say, and he almost quips it a little bit. A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect.
Right.
I think that's way more important to how that makes the viewer feel than some but actually, if you look at this source book from the late 90s, it says that technically a Force Ghost can't, whatever. That's how I feel about
Chlorians anyway.
Yeah. I've always loved that description that you gave, Will, how Sam Witwer has described the Force Ghosts being viewable by the person. I've always thought that made a lot of sense.
Especially because when we see the end of Ahsoka, right? Where it's like Sabine's like, oh, I thought I saw something, and she can't see it. But Ahsoka's looking and she sees, right?
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
It kind of fits too with Empire Strikes Back. I've always kind of thought about that with if you choose to face Vader, you must do it alone. I cannot help you. That the Force Ghost can't appear because Vader's there.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't appear until Luke's alone on the weather vane, basically.
MacMan's right. I think above everything,
tries to.
Neil knows how it works. So let's just trust that.
Yes.
Maybe that also pertains to kind of the decision making to why when we in Rise of Skywalker, how it was supposed to be that thing of like Rey standing there and she's like, I am all the Jedi, and you were supposed to see all of the Force ghosts of all the Jedi. Maybe it makes sense because in the same way, Seth, you're talking about like they can't appear because Vader's there and he wouldn't be able to see them anyway. Palpatine wouldn't be able to see all the Force ghosts of the people who, like, he's not open through the Force enough to be able to view, especially all of the Jedi who he's hated for his entire existence. Like, literally everybody he's worked to kill and off, all he can see is Rey. He doesn't need to see the rest of them. It's kind of that same thing.
Yeah.
Yes, but it would have been cool.
It would have been badass.
Yeah, it would have been, because there's that whole edit, but it's also one of those things where I'm like, you know, it would have been really cool to visually see, but also it's like I can fill in the gaps with my head and be like, yeah, well, like they're still, we know that they're there, right? But I have a couple. I know we gotta wrap up here pretty soon. I've got a couple of like flash fire of things that from the book that I wanted to mention. The one moment that I thought was really cool was the audio transcript of the Jedi arresting Palpatine before it goes into the actual what we see.
Yeah, right.
They're like, this was days before the Empire Day. It's like, and this is the transcript, and you're like reading, you're like, what's going on? And then it jumps right after, like, where you get to see the full picture. I'm like, he didn't need to do that, like, at all. But that was a cool little like interpretive way to show that, right?
This is one of the things that makes, I think, Revenge of the Sith one of the most unique sort of stories and how it was marketed, how it was told, is that it was never about the end. You know what I mean? Like nothing was saved. And so you read that moment and it's like, yeah, of course the bad guys win. You didn't know that? Yeah, they win. Here's what happened though. Yeah. It's just like look at around us here, this marketing image, you know, Vader, we talked about it earlier. You're waiting the whole time for it. You know it's going to happen. You know, they're going to fight on the lava, you know, so you're waiting for it, but it's almost
Who's
like,
Your Daddy poster was hanging in every movie theater.
Yeah, I know. I just seriously imagine that with Doomsday right now. Just it wouldn't. It's incomprehensible.
Yeah,
yeah.
Imagine the end of that movie. You know, whatever is Doom. You know, ripping doing the scene from the comics where he rips the skull and the spine out. Like out of I don't know. Does something like that, right? And
it's just a poster and it's Doom's face, and it just says "I win" at the bottom.
I know it's a prequel, but there were a lot of things people didn't know.
Yeah,
and they just leaned into all of it. They're like, "Yeah, we don't care. You know, you could know all this stuff, but you're still going to come watch it because it's awesome."
Yeah, because it was writing on the weight and the mythology of that line from Obi-Wan, and of course the plot points in the original trilogy for decades. And it's like now you finally get to see it play out, right? And obviously people had problems with it. Like that's the way of Star Wars. People are going to have problems with it and then it grows over time. But like, I imagine a lot of people probably read this book when it came out who had problems with the movie and they were like, oh, I get it. Okay, cool. Like that's really not that you need the book at all. Like this is my first time reading it for 20 years that the movie's existed, but it's definitely, I appreciate it, you know?
Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith era is so peak. Yes, Will.
Just one more example for like the viewing the Force Ghost thing is literally Hayden in Return of the Jedi and not Sebastian Shaw. It's like why would they view him as old Anakin? Because nobody ever saw that version of Anakin. It's like, oh well, would it have just been like burned Sebastian Shaw? Like, why does he have legs? Why doesn't he have no arms as a Force Ghost? It's like, no, you view him from when, like, what his Force essence looks like. And I think also, that's like the vision of it. It's extremely cool.
Even in Ahsoka, he's wearing the Revenge of the Sith robes, which is, but not in like, but Luke wouldn't have ever known that, right? Like, so, you know, it's interesting, like, because I think you could still argue of like, well, you know, Luke saw the Sebastian Shaw face, that's what he would see, but like, at the end of the day, like, you know, it's Anakin, right? So it kind of doesn't matter.
Well, I think it's a little twofold. I think that what Will's saying is true, where you view it's whatever. Like, you knew Obi-Wan, so you could see Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
But also, Obi-Wan does maintain himself in the Force. So he could still appear, maybe, and he might appear to Luke as like Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan. Because Luke still knew him, but Obi-Wan is still choosing his essence because he maintains it, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of both. That's how I see it.
That adds to the validity of your theory, Grayson, that in Ahsoka season 2 we'd see old Ewan as
that
a Force Ghost.
People talk about they want to see Ewan in the Clone Wars armor. Yeah, fine, that'd be cool or whatever.
Dude, I want to see Force Ghost Ewan so bad.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Please.
Give him the gray hair. Get like, oh my gosh, man.
Please.
Especially because you hear his voice in The Force Awakens ever so briefly, and I guess in Rise of Skywalker. And I'm like, man, yes, exactly.
Dave
and I'm
Filoni,
like,
I know you're watching. Please.
Please, Dave. What's because especially because, dude, I saw your shirt, Will, and I was like, that is so sick. Especially with how well he does the accent in the Kenobi series of bridging that gap between him being like, hello there, versus like, hello there. You know, like it's like it's so good.
I just need more Ewan. That's all. I'm fine. If I could just get more Ewan. I just need more Kenobi in general.
Especially after this, I'm with you. Kenobi season 2, make it happen. All right, people were putting the hashtag in there. Let's do it, dude. Let's give it that Andor budget, baby. Like, let's make it happen.
I would watch 6 full hour-long episodes of him just training with Qui-Gon, of just him just meditating and like partially like in silence, riding Eopies around, no dialogue. I'd love that.
Well, also, I'm like, you know, if they adapted certain things, like I always thought it'd be like, you know, or there's the Kenobi novel, and there's like in Legends, like he fought Asherad Het, you know, and if they wanted to set that up or something, like there's so many stories you could tell with.
Now you're talking.
That's
right
in right now.
I still think that would be sick.
You piqued my curiosity.
If they put like set up Crate and then like put him way down the line as like a villain, either for like Luke
and
the animated series. I was about to say, I'm like, I'd be fine. Who aren't they good? Didn't they say like? I don't want to get into that. It's fine.
I'd lose it. That'd be insane.
Oh yeah. Another small moment that I like legitimately like frowned at was Obi-Wan talking about Boga when he was like their friendship, you know, that little moment of like she was his friend. I was like, dude, that's so sad now.
It was. That was a great touch.
Yeah, like it's his dog. Yes, Seth.
Something I learned. I thought Boga was the species. Not the name of it.
Yeah, I also thought
because I had a Star Wars miniature that was Obi-Wan on Boga, and I just thought all of them were Bogas.
Nope, I think they're Baractals, right?
The specific one was named Boga.
Yeah.
There you go. I learned something new.
That was
20 years later.
That was a great little flair that I didn't know I needed, but it was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the fact that she sacrificed herself to save him. I was like, dude, brutal.
Pulling out.
Yeah. Top 5 creature, by the way. Just saying.
It's cool sound.
Oh,
I don't know if it's a top 5 creature.
Yeah. Well, the fact she like comes in clutch as soon as Grievous is like running away.
Yeah.
I think that's all of my. Two last points, some expanded universe stuff. One is in the opening. They bring up some of the ships from Heir to the Empire. And the one that like they mention a dreadnought, like a Republic dreadnought. And obviously this is so like in the battle of Coruscant, amidst obviously the Republic Venators and stuff, which they don't ever say Venator, they just say Republic cruiser or assault cruiser. But they mention there's 3 Carrack class light cruisers, which first appeared in Heir to the Empire, and 1 dreadnought called the like. It starts with like an M, I want to say. Are you trying to find it right now, Connor?
Well, you mentioned there's a reference to the Thrawn trilogy. There's also another one. Hold on, I'm looking for it.
Is that our man from Corellia?
They're Garm Bel Iblis. Yes, there was that.
Garm Bel Iblis is in this book.
That's not what I was looking for, but yes, that's great too. Hold on,
yeah,
I know it's here.
You'll find it.
Keep going. I'll keep looking. I'll chime in right.
Isn't the one? Well, isn't the one senator in it too, or no? The Bothan or no?
No, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
Never mind. No, it is Bel Iblis.
Yeah, they say like Bel Iblis is friends with like one of the other senators, and he's kind of in that like he's in that treaty of like the 2000s, you know, that are like, get out of here, Palpatine, cause a ceasefire. Connor's on the hunt right now. And one other little thing that I thought was cool was like they don't, because you don't really see this in the movie, but like it kind of sets up like for the following days after the Battle of Coruscant that like they're still rebuilding, like buildings are on fire and there's power outages and stuff, and I'm like, that would have been kind of cool to see in the movie, to like have Coruscant be a little bit different, right? Because like they're out on the veranda a lot of times in Padme's apartment, and he's like, I can still, like, there's parts you can still see the smoke and the fire of rubble and crashed ships and things, and I'm like, that would be a little bit more realistic, right?
War-torn Coruscant.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Coruscant's a big place.
Yeah. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
But you're like in galactic. But like they talk about, they're like in Galactic City, right? Because like if Palpatine
Is it all Galactic City?
I don't know.
I don't know.
And another thing, yeah.
Okay, I can't find it, so I'll just paraphrase. So somewhere during the fight where with Boga and Grievous in the unicycle, Stover says that like, and then he drove his staff sardonically down, something like that. And I'm like,
he said sardonic.
There it was.
It's just like, it's the Leo that whoa.
I literally wrote that in my notes. Yeah. Anyway,
I noticed. I'm so glad you picked up on that, Connor, because I read that and I just kind of chuckled. I went, I hope Zahn is out there.
It's only once in the book. It had to be a reference. It had to be.
It's really cool that, like, I mean, obviously that's not like a direct EU reference, but considering the Thrawn trilogy is like,
yeah,
there was the template.
We make T-shirts that just say sardonically, and then under it just says "Bye, Timothy Zahn."
Yes.
Dude,
get him to sign it.
Like that, but
yeah, I think that's really all of the main stuff that I got. Yes, sir.
The thing that tugged on my heartstrings was the R2 and 3PO trying to get Padme onto the ship.
It's a good scene.
I just thought that was like, dang, like because and all that like grandness of all the battles going on at the end of during the Battle of the Heroes and the Duel of Fates and stuff like that, and then it's like, they did have to get her onto the ship, and R2's a hero because like through his boops and beeps, he's like, I don't care, help me get her onto the ship. Where then like 3PO is like trying to like scold him basically, where it's like, you can't carry her, and he's trying,
Yeah.
I just
was also you don't ever think about as well that like R2 was like just hanging around when during that fight was like that he goes there, Anakin kills all the separatists, and then he like hitches a ride with them, and like that there's like that also the moment at which people talk about a lot of like Anakin doesn't talk to me anymore. And you're like, oh, like it's so sad.
Yeah,
I didn't realize, speaking of that, this was a big something that tugged on my heartstrings earlier in the book. I guess I've never connected that Anakin and Padme gave each other their droids.
Yes, dude.
It's like a wedding gift, basically, because it's the only thing that Anakin owned.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that so much. I never considered that.
Yeah, they're their wedding rings.
I saw people
in the wood where they were like, we don't even know what it means, but we should probably bury it with her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do you mean you don't know what it means? It's like, yeah. I can't remember what the wood's made of.
The last thing that I'll say on this is there's that somebody pointed out how just badass Han Solo is rolling up to Cloud City, and he's like going up against Darth Vader, pulls out a blaster, and he's also got him and his wife's wedding rings. Like that's what the text says, is like he's got him and his wife's wedding rings. Like of course Vader's pissed and he doesn't care what happens to Han Solo.
Yeah, who's this guy?
He's like, what? You've got both of my kids, my wedding rings with me, and you're gonna try and shoot me right here? Like, I hate you. You're the worst. I don't care.
Yeah, I was talking about, like, what are you talking about wedding rings? And I was like, oh, you're talking about 3PO.
Yeah, R2 and C3PO.
Yeah,
that's
good.
funny. Yeah, like I love that moment where like when it's that desperation of R2, and it was like he got R2 from Padme, and then he also gave 3PO to Padme. But then he gives 3PO to Padme because he's like, he's like, we're Jedi, we don't have possessions, and then comes once he gets knighted, he like rushes to her apartment and gives her the Padawan braid, and then she's like, oh, I also have something for you now because you will need him more than. And then it's like, dude, it's so good. It skyrockets their relationship for me, because obviously it's not not the most well
Not the most flushed out.
Yeah, but here you
So
you
good.
believe it. Yeah, Will.
Which is also extremely cool when you think about the story of Natalie Portman being like, "Did you take anything from set?" And she's like, "I took a Padawan
Yeah.
braid." That's
Yeah.
really cool.
I thought about that too. Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't even think about
She
that.
took his Padawan braid?
Yeah. You didn't know that?
There's like a couple late night interviews where they're like, "Did you take anything from Star Wars?" And she's like, "Yeah, I took one of the Padawan braids because there were like 20 of them, and they keep having to clip them on, so I stole
Yeah.
one."
Yeah.
Yep.
She's like, "I don't know where it is now, but there was a recent one of that too where she's talking about it." Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
That is cool. That is cool. It's awesome, man. Yeah, I love this book. Truly, like I'd probably give it at least an 8.5 out of 10. If not like a 9. Like I get the humor points and there's some little connective tissue things you're like, but like it's a
That's just
thing.
nitpicking. Honestly, I'd give it a
Yeah.
9. 9.5 maybe.
It's like truly, if you want to get into Star Wars books, this is not a bad place to start because it's kind
it's
of
fun.
it's already pretty easily digestible. Yeah, there's going to be some legends acknowledgments and stuff of like that might confuse you if you're not immersed into that time, but it also kind of like what we said with the Thrawn trilogy really immerses you in the time period that it was written in 20 years ago, which is such a window to the past, and I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Any
Giveaway
final
time?
thoughts before we do this giveaway? And I do have one final point to talk about the book, but we have something to show before that. But I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Hashtag
it again.
ROTS20. Put it in there.
Yeah, last chance.
Last
Guys.
chance. I'm gonna give you like 30 seconds before should I share the screen or should I just go for it?
Seth, just talk, brother.
Okay. I just like last thought is I really like that the whole idea or like the whole theme throughout the book too is that like the Sith changed and the Jedi are the same, the Jedi are the same, the Jedi are the same, the Jedi are the same. The twins are born, and then Obi-Wan and Yoda go, maybe it's time for a change. And I really like that that's kind of like the last thought that the book leaves you with.
Yeah.
And then it also leaves you with like the Senators are like, hey, we're going to fight this from the inside, even though it's not going to seem like it, but we're going to be fighting. For it.
Everybody learns how they have to fight.
Yes. And they have to fight how Palpatine's fighting.
Yep.
Because he's been on the inside this whole time. And it's just
so I love that connected
the idea
tissue.
that Obi-Wan's like, I'm going to be an old eccentric uncle.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, dude, this is awesome. And then the fact too that like Vader's constantly burning in his selfishness forever. Anyway, I just like how everyone ends with this book, like that, where everyone's kind of sitting.
That revelation that Yoda has during the fight, where he's like, nope, we've been fighting wrong this whole time. And now he's finally going to train the new Jedi like he should have trained all the old ones.
Yeah.
It adds a lot of validity to that line that we all love from the beginning of Air, where Obi-Wan says, no, you are not the last of the Jedi. You are the first of the new.
We ready to
And it
do
was
this?
all
We have
planned.
we
Let's
have
do it.
20 entries for this copy right
You guys
here.
are too kind.
There you go.
I occasionally
doing it.
cook.
In 3, 2, 1. If it's one of us, I'll laugh.
I hope I win.
I saw Will there. Oh, I thought I was going to stop on Mortis. I'm like, get out of here. No way. Is it?
Quinlan Voss.
Quinlan
you hear-
Voss,
Wow.
the
You hear, buddy?
Admiral himself.
The Admiral. Quinlan, you have to be here to claim it.
You still
by
in
the
here,
way.
Quinlan?
Is he here? Is he present?
Or are you with Asajj?
Are you with your White Lotus of Alderaan?
Of Alderaan.
Yeah, that's actually where she's from.
Isn't that what it says? That like a pale white flower from Alderaan?
No, that's our joke. We wrote that.
yeah,
in
I know.
our skit.
There you go. It's like,
Not in the real book.
Transcends-
Canon to
Quinlan!
us. Well, he doesn't talk like that. It's
Quinlan, are you here currently? You gotta be here.
Quinlan, where you be, bro?
Quinlan was
He's
here.
all slaying.
I don't think Quinlan is here.
Run it
Yeah.
again.
I'm gonna
reroll.
give. All right, I'm sorry, Quinlan.
It's okay. I think Quinlan won the last one. So
I do. Yeah, I think he won. All right, he hasn't been in the chat for a while. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. Let's see who we can get this time.
I want
It's-
Piatti Diddy to win.
Piatti Diddy would be
Just because that ridiculous profile picture.
Matthew, you're here, buddy. I saw you.
Yes, Matt is here. Congratulations.
You've been signing off in the chat. You here? You here? Go ahead and say
Matt.
if you're here. If you're here, then give me say something in the chat, and then you can DM me on Instagram, and I'll get you this book out tomorrow. You were here 2 seconds ago.
Nah.
Okay, he's here. He's here. Yay! Yayu.
Yeah.
Yayu. Yayu Frick.
Perfect. Matthew, please DM me on Instagram. I'm gonna double check for now. Send me your address. Me, Mortis FM, please. I want to make sure that I get your message before we end the stream tonight. Are you on Instagram? You on Instagram, Matthew? Let me see if you followed me, then I believe I'll get a chat. Yeah, okay. I saw your follower. You Matt. Yep. Okay, cool. Send me a message, and I'll get this book to you. Last thing. Oh, I screwed it all up. Okay, beautiful. We're not in the same spots, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Whatever.
So what's next? Well, we've got a little thing to show y'all, I guess. And before we wrap up here, take a look.
And in the end, you cannot touch the shadow. In the end, you do not even want to. In the end, the shadow is all you have left. Because the shadow understands you. The shadow forgives you. The shadow gathers you unto itself. And within your furnace heart, you burn in your own flame. A warning from a darker time.
That was hype. That was great.
Thank you. Well, it gets even more hype. Yes, Shadow of the Sith is the next book that we will be covering. We'll be splitting it up into 2 parts over the next couple months. But what is even more hype is that is a direct quote from the Revenge of the Sith novelization and the very opening of Shadow of the Sith.
Starts how this book ended.
Yeah,
It's insane.
which I was like, literally, guys, not even planned. But yes, I will read the very opening, but at the very end of Revenge of the Sith, it is that exact quote with expanded upon, this is how it feels to be Anakin Skywalker forever. Insane. You can tell Adam Christopher was a huge fan of this novel, so some great connective tissue there.
I'm excited. I've not read this one. Luke's my boy. I've been wanting to see what happens to him more in this era. I'm excited.
Yeah, and guess what? Just like this time, I'm giving away this copy right here, so you don't want to miss it. The very next stream, if you we'll read it and we'll cover the first half, and I'll be doing a giveaway for this. So don't miss it. Keep an eye out on all of our channels for the specific dates. That's all I got.
There we go.
Woo!
There you go. Revenge of the Sith into Shadow of the Sith. This has been a blast.
This has been great.
Thank y'all, everyone in the chat, for being here. All 45 of you in here currently. Y'all are the best. That's really all I got to say. Any final remarks?
We'll see you next time.
I got to
If it does not appear in our archives, it simply does not exist.
Bye-bye.